When we begin to reflect on the nature of life, we often turn first to the familiar rhythm of breath and heartbeat, the outward signs that our bodies are alive. Yet beneath these gentle rhythms, a quieter story is unfolding, a story written in molecules that move silently within us. Among the most important of these are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. They are the great macronutrients, the fundamental companions of every living being, and they sustain the fragile flame of life from the moment of birth until the final days. To speak of them is not to speak of something foreign or abstract, but rather of what we are made of and what we depend upon. And so, as we enter this quiet lecture, we will move slowly, allowing the weight of these ideas to settle gently like falling leaves, letting the calm of understanding accompany the stillness of rest. The term macronutrient itself carries a certain softness when we take it apart. Macro, meaning large, reminds us that these are nutrients required not in trace amounts, but in abundance. Unlike the delicate whispers of vitamins and minerals, which serve their purposes in tiny quantities, macronutrients form the very substance of our being and the primary sources of energy that keep our cells humming along. Proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are the three pillars of this grand design. Together, they provide energy, shape, repair, and resilience. They appear in every meal we eat, every fruit, every seed, every grain, every morsel of food that living things share. To learn about them is to trace the threads of existence itself. For these molecules do not merely fuel life, they shape its possibilities. Carbohydrates are often the first of the three that we encounter in a direct, sensory way. Sweetness on the tongue, the soft texture of bread, the grains of rice on a dinner plate, all are simple invitations from carbohydrates. In essence, they are chains of sugar molecules, sometimes small and sweet, other times long and complex, woven into the structure of plants and fruits. They provide us with glucose, a kind of universal energy coin that nearly every living cell knows how to spend. Meanwhile, fats are richer, denser, and slower in their gifts. They lie within seeds, nuts, oils, and the tissues of animals. They provide warmth and padding, long-term reserves of energy, and form the delicate membranes of our cells, separating inner life from the outer world. And proteins, the third great class, are builders above all. They are woven from smaller pieces called amino acids, and with these they construct everything from enzymes to muscles, from hormones to the skin that shelters us. It can be soothing to think of them not as chemical abstractions, but as companions we carry always within us. At every moment, they move and change, being digested, absorbed, transformed, and rebuilt. The meal eaten in the morning becomes the energy of afternoon footsteps, or the tissue of healing skin, or the warmth that lingers through the night. The food of yesterday becomes the thought of today, for even our brains rely on these macronutrients, carefully channeled into signals, impulses, and the chemistry of memory. The story of life, in many ways, is the story of how proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are taken from the environment, reshaped by the body, and returned again in new forms. When one observes nature through this quiet lens, one begins to see these molecules everywhere. In the tall grasses of the savanna, starch fills the seeds that nourish grazing animals. In the forests, fruits hold sugars to attract birds and mammals, who in turn scatter the seeds. In oceans, microscopic organisms float with stores of carbohydrates, feeding vast webs of marine life. Fats, too, are scattered widely. In bears and whales, fat provides insulation against cold and a storehouse of energy for long winters or deep dives. In seeds like flax or sunflower, oils sustain the first burst of growth when the plant awakens in spring. Proteins appear wherever structure and action are needed, in spider silk stretched between branches, in the wings of birds, in the leaves of plants capturing sunlight through enzymes that channel its power. Thus, to study these macronutrients is to gaze across the panorama of life itself, for they are present in every corner. Our own history as humans has been shaped by the search for and balance of these nutrients. Early ancestors gathered fruits rich in carbohydrates, hunted animals with fat and protein, and learned to combine foods to create more complete nourishment. Grains and legumes, eaten together, provide the full range of amino acids needed for protein building. Nuts and seeds add essential fatty acids, which the body cannot create on its own. Over countless generations, cultural traditions of cooking emerged not only from taste and convenience, but from a deep, if unconscious, wisdom about balancing these three great sources of sustenance. Even today, every meal we eat carries this legacy, combining macronutrients in subtle patterns that echo back through time. As we let these thoughts drift softly, it is worth noting how delicately balanced the body's needs truly are. Too much of one macronutrient and too little of another can disturb the harmony. Too much sugar, for instance, overwhelms the bloodstream, while too little protein leaves the body unable to repair its tissues. Yet in moderation, and in partnership with one another, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates sustain homeostasis, the body's remarkable ability to remain stable amidst constant change. This balance is never rigid, always adjusting, just as the body itself is always in motion, even at rest. A quiet reminder that life itself is less a fixed state and more a continuous dance of molecules. Even in sleep, when consciousness fades and the body rests, these molecules are hard at work. Carbohydrates are drawn upon to keep the brain supplied with glucose, for the brain consumes a surprising amount of energy even in dreams. Fats serve as reserves, their steady release of energy ensuring that tissues are never starved. Proteins, meanwhile, contribute to the nightly repair of muscle and bone, as the body heals from the gentle wear of the day. Sleep, then, is not an absence of activity, but rather a shift into quieter, hidden labors. The macronutrients continue their silent service, sustaining the body while the mind drifts. Perhaps what is most calming is to realize that these substances are ancient companions, older than humanity itself. Long before humans walked the earth, the first single-celled organisms used carbohydrates to fuel their tiny movements, fats to create membranes around themselves, and proteins to catalyze the reactions that sustain them. The chemistry we rely upon today is the same chemistry that animated the first forms of life billions of years ago. In this way, every meal and every breath ties us back to that deep history, a lineage of molecules stretching across time, from the dawn of life to this present moment. So as we begin this 2-hour journey into the quiet science of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, we do not need to hurry or strive. These molecules will not vanish, nor will the knowledge of them slip away. Instead, let us allow the lecture to move slowly, each idea flowing into the next like a gentle stream. In the chapters ahead, we will take time to explore each macronutrient in turn, to understand their forms, their functions, and the ways they weave together to sustain life. For now, it is enough simply to acknowledge them, to see them not as distant concepts, but as familiar companions already present within us, always serving, always balancing, always quietly at work. And with that recognition, we can rest more easily, knowing that the very essence of life flows gently and unceasingly, even as we drift into sleep. 2. What are macronutrients? To ease into our second part, let us begin by returning to the word itself, macronutrient. It is a term used so often in nutrition and biology, and yet, when spoken softly, it takes on a kind of gentleness. It reminds us that these are not rare or obscure molecules, but the very staples of life. Macro, from the Greek for large, suggests their abundance, their necessity in significant quantities, and nutrient signals their role as sustenance, as that which nurtures, feeds, and supports. Put together, the word tells a simple story. Macronutrients are the large, essential sources of energy and structure that living organisms require, day by day, hour by hour, heartbeat by heartbeat. When we think of nourishment, it can be helpful to distinguish between what the body needs in large amounts and what it needs in tiny, trace amounts. Vitamins and minerals belong to the second group, the micronutrients. They are powerful in their own right, acting as helpers and regulators, ensuring that enzymes function properly and that delicate chemical reactions proceed without error. But in terms of bulk, of weight, of substance, it is the macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates that build us and fuel us. They are the wood in the fire, the bricks in the wall, the ropes and beams of the living house that is the body. Without them, the structure could not stand, and the fire of life could not burn. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins each serve overlapping but distinct purposes. 3 can, in different ways, provide energy, yet each has a signature role as well. Carbohydrates excel as quick fuel, ready to be burned for immediate energy. Fats, dense and long-lasting, provide stored reserves, insulation, and cellular structure. Proteins, versatile and complex, are the craftsmen of biology, shaping tissues, catalyzing reactions, carrying messages, and defending the body. Together they form a trinity of support, complementing one another in ways that ensure the body not only survives but thrives. To appreciate the significance of macronutrients, it is worth pausing to imagine the scale at which they are consumed and used. Every bite of food we take, every sip of milk, every spoonful of rice or beans or fruit is composed largely of these molecules. A slice of bread holds carbohydrates woven into starch, waiting to be broken down into glucose. A handful of nuts holds fats stored as triglycerides, offering energy and essential fatty acids. A piece of cheese holds proteins, folded intricately into casein and other molecules, which can be dismantled into amino acids. These foods are more than tastes and textures. They are packets of macronutrients, each destined to become part of us. At the cellular level, the necessity of macronutrients becomes even clearer. Cells are small, yet they are astonishingly busy, like bustling cities. They need constant supplies of raw material and energy. Carbohydrates provide glucose, which can be transformed into ATP, the universal energy currency that powers cellular work. Fats provide fatty acids, which serve not only as energy sources but as components of the lipid membranes that surround each cell. Proteins provide amino acids, which are reshaped into enzymes, receptors, and the machinery that drives cellular activity. Without a steady flow of these molecules, the cellular city would fall quiet, its lights dimming, its activity ceasing. Life itself is, in this sense, inseparable from the macronutrients that sustain it. Another gentle way to view macronutrients is to think of them as languages. Carbohydrates speak the language of energy bursts, quick availability, fast transfer. Their vocabulary is sugars and starches, simple units and long chains, always convertible into glucose. Fats speak the language of endurance and protection. Their words are triglycerides, phospholipids, and cholesterol, and they tell stories of stored energy, of membranes, of warmth against cold nights. Proteins speak the most intricate language of all. Their words are amino acids, 20 distinct characters that can be arranged into thousands of proteins, each with a different role to play. Together, these three languages create a conversation that is both ancient and ongoing, a dialogue that sustains the orchestra of life. It is also worth noting that not all macronutrients are interchangeable in every sense. While carbohydrates and fats can often substitute for one another as energy sources, proteins are less expendable. The body can, in times of scarcity, burn amino acids for energy, but it prefers not to, for proteins are too valuable in their primary role as builders and regulators. To use them merely as fuel is like burning the walls of your own house for warmth. The body will do it if pressed, but it comes at a cost. This is why balance among macronutrients is so vital. Too much of one and too little of another can leave the body strained, borrowing from its own stores in ways that are not sustainable. On a broader scale, macronutrients are not only the foundation of human nutrition, but of all ecosystems. Plants create carbohydrates through photosynthesis, weaving sugars from sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. These sugars become the basis of nearly every food chain on Earth. Fats, stored in seeds and fruits, provide concentrated energy for the next generation of plants, or for the animals that consume them. Proteins, built from nitrogen taken from the soil or air, create the structures that allow plants to stand tall, leaves to capture light, and seeds to develop. When animals eat plants, they borrow these macronutrients, reshaping them to their own needs. Predators, in turn, feed on prey, continuing the transfer of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates through the web of life. In this way, macronutrients are the common thread woven through every link in the chain, binding together organisms as different as grasses, insects, birds, and humans. Macronutrients also have a quiet role in memory, in culture, and in daily experience. Entire cuisines revolve around their balance. Rice and beans, bread and cheese, lentils and oil, all are human expressions of macronutrient harmony. The traditions of food preparation, from fermentation to cooking, often serve to make these molecules more digestible, more available, more balanced. Generations of human culture have, often without scientific knowledge, discovered how to bring proteins, fats, and carbohydrates together in ways that sustain communities through seasons and hardships. In this sense, macronutrients are not only molecules, they are threads in the fabric of culture. connecting biology with history, science with tradition. So when we ask the simple question, what are macronutrients? The answer is both direct and profound. They are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, the molecules we require in abundance to live. They provide energy, build tissues, protect, repair, and regulate. They shape not only our bodies but the entire living world. They are present in every bite we take, every cell we carry, every generation of life that came before us, and every one that will follow. And as we continue our quiet exploration, we will take time to meet each of them more closely, moving gently into their particular forms and functions, beginning with the ever-present and ever-giving carbohydrates. 3. Carbohydrates, the body's primary energy source. Among the three great macronutrients, carbohydrates often feel the most immediate, the most familiar, and the most closely tied to daily life. Their presence is simple, almost comforting, woven into the bread on the table, the sweetness of fruit, the grain of rice, or the gentle starch of potatoes. They are the molecules of quick energy, designed to be readily taken up and used by the body, and because of this, they occupy a special place, not only in biology, but also in our experience of nourishment itself. When we describe them as the body's primary energy source, we are speaking not just of their abundance, but of their efficiency, of the ease with which living cells, from the simplest bacteria to the most complex human tissues, are able to make use of their stored potential. At the most basic level, carbohydrates are compounds composed of three simple elements: carbon, hydrogen. The name itself reveals this, for carbo refers to carbon and hydrate to water, a combination that reflects their structure. Yet out of this simplicity arises remarkable variety. Carbohydrates may appear as single sugar molecules, small and crystalline, or as long chains, coiled and branched into elaborate structures. In their smallest forms, they are called monosaccharides. The simplest sugars, molecules such as glucose, fructose, and galactose. These tiny units are the building blocks, the letters of the carbohydrate alphabet. When linked together, two at a time, they form disaccharides such as sucrose, lactose, and maltose, which carry with them the sweetness familiar to us in fruit, milk, and grains. Linked further into long chains, they form polysaccharides, the starches and fibers that give bread its body and plants their strength. Glucose, in particular, is the star among sugars. It is the molecule most directly used by the body's cells as fuel. In a way, glucose is the universal currency of energy, a coin that every cell is equipped to spend. When glucose enters a cell, it undergoes a series of quiet transformations, each step carefully orchestrated by enzymes. The end result is the production of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the molecule often called the energy currency of life. ATP, with its small phosphate groups, can be used directly by proteins, enzymes, and transporters, powering everything from muscle contraction to nerve signaling. The relationship is so essential that the brain, one of the body's hungriest organs, depends almost exclusively on glucose to function. Even while the body can survive on fats and proteins when necessary, it is glucose that provides the steady stream of energy required for thought, memory, and awareness. In the broader world of biology, carbohydrates serve many functions beyond energy. Plants use cellulose, a long carbohydrate chain, to build their cell walls, creating structures strong enough to support towering trees. Insects build exoskeletons with chitin, another carbohydrate derivative. Animals store excess glucose in the form of glycogen, coiling the molecules into dense reserves that can be drawn upon when quick energy is needed. These examples remind us that carbohydrates are not just fuel, but also structure, strength, and resilience, serving as both the spark of energy and the framework that supports life. The process by which the body accesses carbohydrates begins the moment food enters the mouth. Enzymes in saliva start breaking down starches into smaller sugars. As food travels into the stomach and intestines, other enzymes continue the work, reducing complex carbohydrates to simple glucose molecules. The small intestine, with its vast surface area, absorbs these sugars and transfers them into the bloodstream. From there, glucose is carried throughout the body, delivered to every cell. The liver plays a balancing role, storing glucose as glycogen when levels are high, and releasing it again when the blood begins to run low. In this way, the body maintains a steady supply, ensuring that energy is available even between meals or during sleep. Fiber, another form of carbohydrate, plays a subtler but equally important role. Unlike starches and sugars, fiber is not fully broken down or absorbed by the human digestive system. Instead, it moves gently through the intestines, providing bulk, aiding in digestion, and feeding the beneficial bacteria of the gut. These microbes, in turn, break down some fibers into short-chain fatty acids, which serve as additional sources of energy and contribute to gut health. In this way, fiber acts less as fuel and more as a quiet regulator, supporting the digestive system and maintaining balance. Throughout human history, carbohydrates have been central to survival and culture. Early humans relied on fruits, tubers, and grains as accessible sources of energy. As agriculture developed, staple crops such as rice, wheat, corn, and potatoes became the backbone of civilizations. Entire societies were shaped by the cultivation of carbohydrate-rich foods, their growth determining settlement patterns, trade routes, and cultural traditions. Even today, meals around the world are anchored by these staples. Whether it be bread in Europe, rice in Asia, or maize in the Americas, the presence of carbohydrates in food is not just a matter of nutrition, but of heritage, a quiet continuity, connecting generations across time. From the perspective of balance, carbohydrates are most effective when combined with proteins and fats. A meal of bread alone will provide quick energy, but the addition of cheese or olive oil slows digestion, offering sustained release and a sense of satiety. The body, wise in its design, knows how to blend these macronutrients together, drawing from each what it needs. Too much carbohydrate without balance, however, can overwhelm the system, flooding the blood with glucose and requiring the careful intervention of insulin to restore equilibrium. In this way, carbohydrates remind us of the importance of moderation and harmony, qualities that echo not only in biology but in life itself. As we drift further into this calm reflection, it is soothing to recognize that carbohydrates connect us to the cycles of nature. Plants create them by capturing sunlight through photosynthesis, weaving carbon dioxide and water into glucose. Animals then consume these plants, borrowing their sugars for energy and growth. When animals exhale carbon dioxide, the cycle begins anew, returning carbon to the air where plants can once again weave it into carbohydrate. This great cycle has been turning for billions of years, an endless exchange of energy between sunlight, plants, animals, and air. To eat a piece of fruit or grain is to participate in this ancient rhythm, to accept a gift passed down from sunlight itself. Carbohydrates, then, are more than nutrition facts on a label. They are the molecules that power thought and motion, that give shape to plants and strength to ecosystems, that sustain civilizations and connect us to the quiet pulse of the natural world. They are, in truth, the body's primary energy source, a role they have played since the first living organisms discovered how to capture energy from their surroundings. And as we close this part of our gentle journey, we may rest in the knowledge that every step we take, every breath we draw, every dream we dream, is quietly sustained by the humble, ever-present gift of carbohydrates. 4. Simple and complex carbohydrates. When we speak of carbohydrates in the broad sense, we are really gathering together a wide family of molecules that share certain traits, but differ in size, shape, and complexity. To better understand them, it helps to imagine carbohydrates on a spectrum, ranging from the simplest and smallest sugars, which dissolve easily and act swiftly in the body, to the long, winding chains of starch and fiber, which move more slowly, offering endurance and structure. This gentle distinction gives us the categories of simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates, two sides of the same family, each with a role to play in the quiet harmony of biology. Simple carbohydrates are the smallest members of this family. They include single sugar units, known as monosaccharides, and double units, known as disaccharides. Glucose, fructose, and galactose are the most common monosaccharides. Glucose is the primary sugar that circulates in the blood and fuels nearly all cells, while fructose, found in fruits and honey, offers sweetness with a slightly different metabolic path. Galactose, less familiar on its own, often pairs with glucose to form lactose, the sugar found in milk. When two monosaccharides link together, disaccharides are formed. Sucrose, a combination of glucose and fructose, is the common table sugar we sprinkle into tea. Lactose, a combination of glucose and galactose, nourishes infants through milk. Maltose, made of two glucose units, appears when starch begins to break down, such as in sprouting grains or in the early stages of digestion. The beauty of simple carbohydrates lies in their immediacy. They require little effort for the body to use, entering the bloodstream quickly and supplying energy with ease. This is why a piece of fruit can refresh us almost instantly, or why honey has long been valued as a quick source of fuel. Yet this same swiftness also carries with it a certain impermanence. The energy from simple sugars arrives quickly, but it can fade just as rapidly, leaving the body once again in need of sustenance. In moderation, they are helpful, but when taken in excess or without the balance of other nutrients, they can overwhelm the body, causing the familiar rise and fall of energy that we sometimes call a sugar rush followed by a crash. Complex carbohydrates, in contrast, are larger and more intricate. They are built from long chains of glucose molecules, sometimes straight and sometimes branching into elaborate forms. These polysaccharides include starch, glycogen, and fiber, each serving a distinct role in the world of living things. Starch is the main storage form of carbohydrates in plants, found abundantly in grains, legumes, and root vegetables. When we eat bread, rice, or potatoes, we are consuming starch, which our digestive system slowly breaks down into glucose. Glycogen, on the other hand, is the animal counterpart to starch, a molecule stored in the liver and muscles, ready to be mobilized when quick energy is needed. Unlike starch, glycogen is highly branched, allowing it to be rapidly broken apart and released as glucose into the bloodstream. Fiber, another form of complex carbohydrate, is unique in that humans cannot fully digest it. It passes through the digestive tract, providing bulk, aiding in regular movement, and nourishing the bacteria of the gut, who in turn transform it into beneficial compounds. The difference between simple and complex carbohydrates can be felt in the way the body responds. Simple sugars act like a spark, lighting up quickly, but fading soon after. Complex carbohydrates act like a slow-burning log, releasing energy gradually, sustaining the body over longer periods. When a bowl of oatmeal provides steady energy through the morning, it is because of these long chains of carbohydrates breaking down slowly, preventing sudden spikes and drops in blood sugar. When a piece of whole fruit provides both sweetness and satiety, it is because the simple sugar fructose is balanced by fiber, which slows digestion and tempers the release of glucose into the bloodstream. Nature, in its quiet wisdom, rarely provides sugars alone. Fruits, for instance, contain simple sugars, but they also hold fiber, water, and vitamins, creating a gentle balance. Grains contain starch, but in their whole form, they also offer fiber, protein. This combination ensures that energy is released steadily, and that the body receives not only fuel, but also the other nutrients required for growth and repair. It is only when sugars are isolated, refined, and stripped of their natural companions that they lose this balance, delivering energy too quickly and without the sustaining elements that nature intended. In ecosystems, the distinction between simple and complex carbohydrates plays out in fascinating ways. Plants that store starch in roots or seeds provide reserves not only for their own growth but also for the animals that depend on them. Grasses and grains, rich in starch, sustain entire herds of herbivores, which in turn sustain predators. Fruits, offering simple sugars, attract animals who eat them and scatter the seeds, completing the cycle of growth and dispersal. Fiber, though indigestible to humans, is consumed by ruminants, such as cows and deer, whose specialized stomachs, aided by microbes, can break down cellulose and extract energy. In this way, carbohydrates, simple and complex, weave their influence across food webs, supporting the smallest insects and the largest mammals alike. For humans, the presence of both simple and complex carbohydrates in the diet reflects a long history of adaptation. Early foragers would have encountered sweet fruits in season, consuming their simple sugars quickly, while also digging up roots and tubers filled with starch, which offered more sustained nourishment. Over time, the cultivation of grains introduced a steady supply of complex carbohydrates, shaping civilizations. The sweetness of fruit or honey became a treat, a rare burst of energy, while bread, rice, or maize became the daily foundation. Today, we live with an abundance that our ancestors never knew, with simple sugars more readily available than ever before. Yet the wisdom of balance remains the same. Energy that arrives slowly, accompanied by fiber and other nutrients, is gentler on the body, providing not only fuel but also a sense of harmony. In thinking about simple and complex carbohydrates, It is soothing to remember that both have their place, each fulfilling a role in the rhythm of life. A piece of fruit refreshes us in the moment, while a serving of grains sustains us through the day. Fiber moves quietly through the body, unseen but essential, supporting health and stability. Together, these forms of carbohydrate remind us that nourishment is not a matter of one or the other, but of balance, of variety, of the interplay between immediacy and endurance. And so, as we bring this part to a close, we see carbohydrates not as a single entity, but as a family, with many branches, some small and sweet, others long and sturdy. They are simple sparks and slow-burning flames, companions for both quick activity and steady strength. In their diversity, they reflect the diversity of life itself, offering energy in many forms, always returning us to the quiet truth that in both simplicity and complexity, there is nourishment enough to sustain us. 5. How the body uses carbohydrates. When we think about carbohydrates, we often imagine them as food on a plate, bread, fruit, rice, or perhaps something sweet. Yet once they enter the body, they are transformed, reshaped into forms the cells can understand and use. The journey from a meal to the quiet workings of the body is long and intricate, but when followed step by step, it reveals a story of remarkable harmony. Carbohydrates are not simply consumed. They are digested, absorbed, transported, stored, and finally used to provide energy or to build more complex molecules. Each stage unfolds with its own rhythm, ensuring that the energy of food becomes the energy of life. The story begins the moment carbohydrates touch the tongue. Enzymes in saliva, particularly one called amylase, begin to break long chains of starch into smaller fragments. Though the process is only partial, it marks the first transformation of food into a form more accessible to the body. As food travels into the stomach, the acidic environment slows carbohydrate digestion. But once it passes into the small intestine, the process resumes with new vigor. Here, powerful enzymes continue breaking starch into simple sugars, mainly glucose, which can be absorbed directly into the bloodstream. The small intestine is the great gateway of absorption. Its surface is lined with millions of tiny folds and finger-like projections called villi, which increase the surface area and allow sugars to pass easily into the blood. Once inside, glucose enters the circulation and begins its journey to the cells. This is the moment when energy becomes available, when the potential stored in plants or grains is transferred into the bloodstream of the body, ready to fuel movement, thought, and every hidden function that sustains life. Yet the body is careful with this gift. It does not allow glucose to accumulate endlessly in the blood, for too much can be harmful. Instead, a quiet system of regulation steps in, guided by the hormone insulin produced by the pancreas. When blood glucose rises after a meal, insulin signals the cells of the body to open their doors, allowing glucose to enter. Muscle cells take it in to power movement. Fat cells absorb it and convert some into storage. The liver, ever the watchful regulator, stores excess glucose as glycogen, coiling the molecules into compact reserves that can be released later. In this way, the body smooths out the fluctuations of food intake, ensuring a steady balance of energy. The role of glycogen is particularly elegant. In the muscles, glycogen provides quick energy during activity. When we walk, climb, or run, the muscles call upon their stores, breaking glycogen into glucose for immediate use. In the liver, glycogen serves a broader purpose, maintaining the level of glucose in the blood itself. Between meals, while sleeping, or during fasting, the liver gently releases glucose from glycogen, ensuring that the brain and other organs never lack fuel. This dual system muscles storing energy for themselves. The liver storing it for the whole body reflects the careful design of carbohydrate metabolism. Of course, there are times when glycogen reserves run low. Prolonged exercise, fasting, or periods of low carbohydrate intake can deplete these stores. In such cases, the body turns to other sources. It can convert certain amino acids from proteins into glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. It can also begin to rely more heavily on fats, breaking them into fragments that can be used for energy. Still, the preference of the body is clear. Glucose remains the simplest and most direct form of energy for most cells. The brain in particular depends on it almost exclusively, consuming a disproportionate share of the body's glucose supply, even at rest. Beyond energy, carbohydrates also serve as building blocks for other molecules. Glucose can be converted into ribose, a sugar used in DNA and RNA, the carriers of genetic information. Sugars also form part of glycolipids and glycoproteins, molecules that decorate the surfaces of cells and play roles in communication and recognition. Thus, carbohydrates contribute not only to energy but to structure and identity at the cellular level. They are both fuel and message, both sustenance and signal. The pace at which carbohydrates are used depends on their form and context. A simple sugar, absorbed quickly, may cause a rapid rise in blood glucose, leading to a swift but temporary burst of energy. A complex carbohydrate, rich in fiber, digests more slowly, offering a gradual release that sustains the body over hours. This is why meals with whole grains, legumes, or vegetables often provide a sense of lasting fullness, while sweets may satisfy briefly but fade soon after. The body responds differently depending on the form, yet in both cases, the underlying process is the same. Glucose enters cells, fuels their activities, and is regulated by the body's intricate systems of balance. In times of abundance, when more glucose is available than is immediately needed, the body converts the excess into fat. This transformation ensures that no energy is wasted, storing it for future times of scarcity. While fat may seem distinct from carbohydrates, in reality, the two are linked by this conversion. Excess sugar can become stored fat, while in times of fasting, fat can be broken down to provide fragments that substitute for glucose. This interplay reveals a deeper truth. The macronutrients are not isolated silos but part of a fluid and interconnected system, each able to support the other depending on need. In daily life, the use of carbohydrates unfolds quietly, without conscious awareness. As we walk, the glucose in our muscles burns steadily, powering each step. As we think, the brain consumes sugar constantly, even in silence. As we sleep, the liver releases glucose from glycogen, ensuring that the night passes without interruption. Carbohydrates are, in this sense, the gentle background hum of life, always at work, always present, ensuring that energy is available, that tissues are maintained, that cells continue their unending labor. It is calming to realize that this system is self-regulating, guided by feedback loops and hormonal signals that adjust moment by moment. We do not need to command our cells to use glucose, nor instruct the liver to release glycogen. The body, through millions of years of evolution, has already learned these rhythms. All that is required of us is to provide the nourishment, and the body does the rest. In this way, carbohydrates are not only a source of energy, but also a source of trust, a reminder that life is supported by quiet processes that continue whether we are aware of them or not. And so, in reflecting on how the body uses carbohydrates, we see a journey that begins in the mouth and ends in every living cell. From starch broken down into sugar, to glucose absorbed and delivered, to glycogen stored and released, the pathway is long but seamless. At every step, the body transforms, balances, and adapts, ensuring that energy flows where it is needed most. It is a cycle as old as life itself, one that sustains every thought, every motion, every dream, and as we drift toward rest, it is soothing to know that this cycle continues quietly within us, carrying us through the night with the gentle power of carbohydrates. 6. Fats. Concentrated energy and structure. If carbohydrates are the quick sparks of life, fleeting and ready to be spent in the moment, fats are the steady embers, glowing slowly, holding within them the promise of endurance. They are denser, more compact, and in many ways more versatile than any other macronutrient. When the body seeks long-term energy, insulation from the cold, or the very material from which to build its cellular walls, it turns to fats. In truth, the word fat is only one part of a larger family known as lipids, a family that includes not only the familiar oils and butter, but also the waxes that coat leaves, the phospholipids that shape membranes, and the cholesterol that serves as a silent precursor to vital hormones. To reflect on fats is to move slowly, appreciating not just their richness and energy, but also their central role in the structure of life itself. Fats, in their simplest form, are molecules made of glycerol and fatty acids. The common storage fats of animals and plants, known as triglycerides, are built from one glycerol molecule joined to 3 fatty acid chains. These chains vary in length and in their degree of saturation, a quality determined by the number of hydrogen atoms attached to the carbon backbone. Saturated fatty acids are fully loaded with hydrogen, straight and stable, packing tightly together, and often solid at room temperature. Unsaturated fatty acids, by contrast, have one or more bends or kinks, caused by double bonds in their structure. These bends prevent them from stacking closely, making them liquid at room temperature, as in oils. This gentle distinction between saturated and unsaturated gives fats their diversity of form and function. The richness of fats lies in their concentration of energy. Each gram of fat holds about 9 calories of potential, more than double the energy found in a gram of carbohydrate or protein. This density makes fats the body's favored form of long-term storage. When energy is abundant and glucose plentiful, the body carefully tucks away the excess in the form of fat, storing it in adipose tissue beneath the skin and around organs. These reserves are not idle. They are living stores, ready to be called upon in times of fasting, scarcity, or extended exertion. When glycogen runs low, when food is not immediately available, the body turns to these reserves, releasing fatty acids into the bloodstream, where they can be carried to muscles, the heart, or the liver to be burned for energy. Yet to think of fats only as fuel would be to overlook their other, quieter roles. Every cell in the body is enclosed by a membrane, a thin yet resilient barrier made primarily of phospholipids. These molecules resemble triglycerides, but with one of their fatty acid chains replaced by a phosphate group, creating a structure that is both water-loving at one end and water-fearing at the other. When arranged in a double layer, phospholipids form the protective walls of cells, separating the inner world of the cytoplasm from the outer environment. In this way, fats are not only reserves of energy, but also the very material that shapes and defines the cell itself. Without them, life could not create compartments, could not organize itself, could not persist. Cholesterol, another lipid, plays a similarly essential role. Though often spoken of with unease, cholesterol is not an intruder but a necessity. It weaves itself into cell membranes, lending them stability and flexibility. It also serves as the raw material from which the body creates steroid hormones, including cortisol, estrogen, and testosterone molecules that govern stress responses, reproduction, growth, and countless other processes. From cholesterol also arises vitamin D, formed in the skin with the help of sunlight, essential for the health of bones and immunity. In these subtle ways, fats influence not only structure but also communication, signaling, and adaptation. Nature offers many illustrations of the importance of fats. In cold environments, animals such as whales, seals, and polar bears survive through thick layers of blubber, which insulate them against freezing waters and serve as vast stores of energy during long migrations or lean seasons. In seeds and nuts, fats are packed densely to nourish the first stirrings of a new plant, sustaining growth until leaves can emerge and capture sunlight. Even in the microscopic world, fats provide waterproof coatings for leaves, feathers, and insect exoskeletons, protecting against water loss and damage. In all these examples, fats reveal their dual identity. They are both shield and storehouse, both protection and provision. For humans, fats have always been a source of both survival and pleasure. Early hunter-gatherers prized fatty cuts of meat and marrow for their rich energy, essential during harsh winters. Coastal peoples turned to fish and marine animals, drawing upon their oils not only as food but also as fuel for lamps and as protection against the cold. Today, culinary traditions still reflect this long history. Olive oil in Mediterranean cooking, coconut milk in tropical cuisines, butter and ghee in northern climates. In each case, fats carry flavor, texture, and satiety, reminding us that nourishment is not only about sustenance, but also about comfort. In the body, the storage and use of fat are carefully regulated. Adipose tissue, once thought to be merely passive storage, is now known to be metabolically active. It releases hormones and signaling molecules that influence appetite, metabolism, and inflammation. Fat cells expand when energy is abundant and shrink when reserves are used, but they are never silent. They participate in the conversation of the body, sending signals that influence how much we eat, how much energy we burn, and how the body balances itself. This quiet communication adds another layer to the role of fats, not simply static reserves, but dynamic participants in physiology. At times, the body even transforms carbohydrates into fats, weaving excess glucose into fatty acids and storing them away. This process, called lipogenesis, ensures that energy is never wasted, and when food is scarce, the body reverses the process, breaking down triglycerides into glycerol and fatty acids. The liver can even convert some of these fragments into ketone bodies, alternative fuels that the brain can use when glucose is limited. This adaptability demonstrates the body's deep reliance on fats, not only as backup energy but as versatile molecules that bridge gaps, support survival, and allow flexibility. The quiet truth is that fats are not the enemy they are sometimes portrayed to be. They are as old as life itself, essential companions from the beginning of evolution. They provide stability, warmth, endurance, and communication. They cushion and protect. They sustain and enrich. To recognize their place is to see balance. For like all macronutrients, their value lies not in extremes, but in harmony. Too little fat and the body falters, unable to absorb fat-soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, and K, unable to build strong cell membranes, unable to maintain balance. Too much fat, especially in refined or artificial forms, can overwhelm the body, disrupting the same harmony. But in their natural state, in oils, seeds, nuts, fish, and other whole foods, fats are not only acceptable, but indispensable. As we drift in thought toward rest, it is calming to consider fats as a quiet reservoir, a steady ember that burns gently beneath the surface. While carbohydrates may provide the flame that dances brightly for a moment, fats provide the glowing coals that last through the night. They are the body's assurance, the guarantee that energy will not fail, that warmth will remain, that structure will hold. In this way, fats are more than nutrients. They are symbols of resilience, of continuity, of the ability of life to endure. And as we move forward in our gentle exploration, we carry with us the recognition that fats are not to be feared, but to be understood and respected as one of the most enduring companions of life. 7. Types of fats. When we speak of fats in the broad sense, it is easy to imagine them as one single substance, something uniform that appears in butter, oils, nuts, and the tissues of animals. Yet, as with many aspects of biology, the truth is more intricate and more fascinating. Fats come in many forms, each with its own character, its own properties, and its own quiet role within the body. Some are solid, some are liquid, some are stable, and some are fluid and flexible. To understand the types of fats is to appreciate how subtle variations in their structure create great differences in their behavior, both in the natural world and within our own cells. At the heart of these differences lies the structure of the fatty acid chains that make up fats. Each chain is built of carbon atoms linked together, with hydrogen atoms attached along the way. The nature of these bonds, whether they are fully saturated with hydrogen or interrupted by double bonds, determines whether a fat is saturated, monounsaturated, or polyunsaturated. These terms may seem technical, yet they describe a simple distinction between straight chains and bent chains, between fats that stack tightly together and those that remain fluid and flexible. Saturated fats are the most straightforward in their design. Their carbon chains hold as many hydrogen atoms as possible, leaving no room for double bonds. This straightness allows the molecules to pack closely, like neatly stacked logs, making them solid at room temperature. Butter, lard, and the fat found in meat are common examples of saturated fats. In plants, certain tropical oils, such as coconut oil and palm oil, also contain high amounts of saturated fats, which explains their firmness compared to the liquid oils of olives or sunflowers. Saturated fats are stable, resistant to spoiling, and have long been part of human diets, offering concentrated energy and richness. Within the body, they provide insulation, serve as fuel, and form part of cell structures. Monounsaturated fats, by contrast, contain a single double bond in their carbon chain. This bond introduces a gentle bend, preventing the molecules from stacking too closely together. As a result, monounsaturated fats are usually liquid at room temperature but may solidify when cooled. Olive oil is one of the best-known sources, joined by canola oil, avocados, and many nuts. These fats bring fluidity and flexibility to cell membranes, ensuring that they are not too rigid. They are also more easily influenced by enzymes, allowing the body to use them in versatile ways. Their presence in traditional diets, especially those of Mediterranean cultures, reflects not only their availability in certain regions, but also their gentle balance between energy and function. Polyunsaturated fats extend this flexibility further, containing 2 or more double bonds within their chains. These multiple bends keep the molecules fluid and open, preventing them from ever becoming fully solid. Polyunsaturated fats are found in seeds, nuts, fatty fish, and plant oils such as sunflower, flaxseed, and soybean oil. Within this group are 2 families of particular importance: omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. These terms refer to the position of the first double bond along the chain. But more importantly, they represent essential fatty acids that the body cannot produce on its own. We must obtain them from food, for they serve as building blocks for molecules that regulate inflammation, blood flow, and communication between cells. Omega-3s, found in fish, flax, and walnuts, are especially vital for the brain and eyes, supporting cognition and vision. Omega-6s, more common in many plant oils, play roles in growth and immune function. Together, they remind us that fats are not merely storage, but active participants in the regulation of life. Then there are trans fats, a form that is both rare in nature and problematic in human health. Trans fats occur when unsaturated fats are artificially altered, changing the natural bend in their structure into a straighter, more rigid form. This makes them behave more like saturated fats, becoming solid at room temperature. For decades, trans fats were used in processed foods to improve texture and shelf life, appearing in margarine, baked goods, and fried foods. Yet their stability comes at a cost. Unlike naturally occurring fats, trans fats interfere with normal cellular processes, disrupting membranes and increasing the risk of imbalances within the body. Because of this, they are now widely discouraged and being phased out of many food supplies. Their story is a reminder that while fats in their natural state are essential and beneficial, artificial alteration can disturb the harmony that evolution has refined over millions of years. In considering the types of fats, it is also helpful to remember that most foods contain a mixture. Olive oil, though rich in monounsaturated fat, also contains small amounts of saturated and polyunsaturated fats. Butter, while high in saturated fat, also offers some monounsaturated and polyunsaturated content. Nuts and seeds present complex blends, offering energy, essential fatty acids, and even trace amounts of fat-soluble vitamins. In this way, fats resist neat classification in daily life, for nature tends toward mixtures rather than pure substances. What matters most is the balance, the proportion, and the context in which fats are consumed. Beyond their classification, The types of fats influence the properties of the body itself. A diet rich in saturated fats alone can make cell membranes more rigid, while one rich in polyunsaturated fats can increase fluidity. The ideal lies somewhere in between, a balance that allows membranes to be both stable and flexible, both protective and responsive. This balance extends to the larger scale as well, influencing metabolism, inflammation, and even mood. Fatty acids, particularly omega-3s, are woven into the membranes of neurons, influencing the transmission of signals in the brain. They become part of the retina, supporting vision. They are transformed into signaling molecules that calm inflammation or, in balance, allow it to rise when needed to fight infection. In each of these cases, the type of fat matters deeply, shaping not only the body's form, but also its function. Human history has long reflected this understanding, even without scientific language. Cultures with access to olive groves built diets around liquid oils, rich in monounsaturated fats. Coastal peoples consumed fish, gaining the benefits of omega-3s. In colder climates, animal fats provided insulation and energy, sustaining communities through long winters. Each tradition, in its way, discovered how to balance the types of fats available, weaving them into the rhythms of survival and culture. Today, science confirms what tradition has long practiced, that diversity in fats, with an emphasis on natural sources, supports life in its fullest sense. And so, when we speak of types of fats, we are not only categorizing molecules, we are recognizing the subtlety of nature's design, from the firmness of saturated fats to the fluidity of polyunsaturated ones, from the balance of monounsaturated oils to the cautionary tale of trans fats. The picture is one of diversity, each type fulfilling its place in the grand pattern. The body, wise in its needs, draws upon this diversity, weaving fats into membranes, hormones, energy reserves, and signals, creating a harmony that sustains us in silence. To appreciate these types is not to worry over them, but to rest in the knowledge that fats, in their many forms, are not strangers but companions, each contributing to the endurance and resilience of life. 8. Cholesterol and phospholipids. As we continue our quiet journey through the world of fats, it is fitting to pause and consider two of the less obvious but deeply important members of the lipid family: cholesterol and phospholipids. Unlike triglycerides, which store energy, these molecules play more structural and regulatory roles. They are not always spoken of with the same warmth as olive oil or the richness of butter, yet they are no less vital. In truth, without cholesterol and phospholipids, life, as we know it, could not exist. Every cell, every tissue, every organism depends upon them, and though their names may carry associations that are sometimes misunderstood in their natural place, they are quiet architects of stability and form. Cholesterol is perhaps the most misunderstood of the lipids. In popular conversation, it is often seen only as something harmful, a substance to be lowered or avoided. Yet cholesterol is not an intruder in the body. It is produced within us, crafted by the liver, and used constantly. It is present in every cell, woven into the delicate structure of cell membranes. Its role there is subtle yet profound. Cholesterol sits among the phospholipids of the membrane, filling in spaces, lending strength where needed, and adding fluidity where flexibility is required. Without cholesterol, membranes would either become too rigid or too fragile, unable to function as living boundaries. With cholesterol, they are just right, firm enough to protect, yet supple enough to allow movement, communication, and the quiet exchange of materials. Beyond its role in membranes, cholesterol serves as a precursor to molecules that govern some of the most essential processes in life. Steroid hormones, cortisol, aldosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are all built from cholesterol. These hormones regulate stress responses, fluid balance, reproduction, growth, and countless other rhythms of the body. Vitamin D, which supports bone health and immunity, is also derived from cholesterol, formed in the skin when sunlight touches it. Even bile acids, which the liver produces to help digest fats, are made from cholesterol. In each of these roles, cholesterol is not a danger but a foundation, a raw material from which the body fashions the signals and supports that allow life to adapt and endure. Phospholipids, though less widely discussed, are equally indispensable. These molecules are the primary fabric of cell membranes, forming the thin, flexible walls that surround every living cell. A phospholipid has a unique shape. One end loves water, while the other avoids it. When placed in water, these molecules naturally arrange themselves into bilayers, with the water-loving ends facing outward and the water-avoiding tails tucked inward. This arrangement creates a stable boundary, separating the inner world of the cell from the outer environment. Without this separation, cells could not exist. It is within these boundaries that life organizes itself, that chemical reactions can be controlled, that information can be stored and transmitted. The phospholipid bilayer is not simply a wall. It is the stage upon which the drama of life unfolds. What makes membranes remarkable is not only their stability, but also their flexibility. They are not rigid enclosures, but living, dynamic structures. Proteins float within them, carrying messages, transporting molecules, or catalyzing reactions. Sugars attach to their surfaces, creating markers that help cells recognize one another. Cholesterol, embedded among the phospholipids, adjusts the fluidity, ensuring that membranes are neither too stiff nor too loose. This interplay between phospholipids, cholesterol, proteins, and sugars creates the living fabric of every cell, a boundary that breathes, communicates, and responds. Cholesterol and phospholipids also remind us of the interconnectedness of nutrients. The fats we consume, whether from plants or animals, provide the raw materials for these molecules. Yet the body is not wholly dependent on food for them. It can create cholesterol and phospholipids from simpler components. This adaptability ensures that life is never too fragile, never fully dependent on external sources. Still, the presence of healthy fats in the diet, especially unsaturated ones, supports the body in crafting membranes that are balanced and resilient. The quality of fats we consume becomes, in a very real sense, the quality of our cellular fabric. Nature abounds with examples of these molecules at work. In the nervous system, phospholipids and cholesterol form the myelin sheath, a protective layer that wraps around nerves and allows electrical signals to travel swiftly and efficiently. In the liver, cholesterol is transformed into bile acids, which flow into the intestines to emulsify fats, breaking them into droplets that can be digested more easily. In plants, similar phospholipid structures create the membranes that surround chloroplasts, the organelles where sunlight is captured and transformed into energy. Across the tree of life, from the smallest bacterium to the most complex mammal, phospholipids and cholesterol, or their structural cousins, shape and protect every cell. Human history, too, has long been entwined with these molecules, though often indirectly. The use of eggs, rich in phospholipids such as lecithin, in cooking and baking, has been valued for centuries, not only for nutrition, but also for their emulsifying properties, blending oil and water into smooth sauces and doughs. Foods rich in cholesterol, such as dairy and shellfish, have been both prized and restricted, reflecting shifting cultural beliefs about health. Yet beneath these traditions lies the deeper truth. These molecules, whether obtained through food or produced within, are not optional extras, but central to life. When we reflect gently on cholesterol and phospholipids, it becomes clear that they embody two sides of the same principle. Cholesterol lends membranes just the right balance of firmness and flexibility. Phospholipids create the very boundaries of cells, shaping life at its smallest scale. Together, they make possible the existence of organized, living matter, allowing complex organisms to emerge from simple beginnings. Without them, there would be no tissues, no organs, no thoughts, no awareness. They are, in a quiet and profound way, part of the very possibility of being alive. As we close this part, it is soothing to let go of the unease that sometimes surrounds the word cholesterol, and to instead see it for what it truly is: a helper, a builder, a partner in the architecture of life. Alongside phospholipids, it creates the stage upon which every moment of our existence unfolds. To breathe, to move, to think, all require membranes that are strong, yet flexible, boundaries that hold, but also allow exchange. In this sense, cholesterol and phospholipids are more than molecules. They are the silent custodians of life's form, always present, always working, ensuring that the fragile flame of life remains protected and sustained. 9. Proteins, the body's builders and workers. If carbohydrates are the sparks of quick energy, and fats are the glowing embers of long-term endurance, then proteins are the craftsmen of life, the builders, the repairers, the workers who carry out countless delicate tasks. Where carbohydrates and fats are primarily fuels and structures, proteins are function itself. They are enzymes that make chemical reactions possible, messengers that carry signals, defenders that protect against harm, and scaffolds that shape our tissues. To imagine life without proteins is to imagine a world without structure, without repair, without movement or thought. Proteins are not just one part of life, they are woven into every corner of its fabric. At their core, proteins are made of chains of smaller units called amino acids. There are 20 main amino acids, each with its own character, determined by the shape and chemical nature of its side group. Some are small and simple, others bulky or charged, others able to bend or form bonds with their neighbors. Like letters of an alphabet, these amino acids can be arranged in countless sequences. And just as letters form words and sentences with different meanings, amino acids combine to form proteins with different shapes and purposes. A string of amino acids becomes a chain. The chain folds upon itself. And from that folding emerges a three-dimensional structure, unique and precise. It is in this shape that the magic lies. For structure determines function. A slight twist here, a curve there, and suddenly a protein becomes an enzyme, or a receptor, or a fiber strong enough to hold tissues together. One of the most striking roles of proteins is in building the body itself. Collagen, for example, is the most abundant protein in the human body, forming long, rope-like fibers that provide strength to skin, tendons, and bones. Keratin, another protein, shapes hair and nails, creating resilience against wear. Actin and myosin, two proteins that work together, create the contraction of muscles, allowing movement from the smallest twitch of an eyelid to the stride of a long journey. In every corner of the body, proteins provide scaffolding and machinery, giving tissues their form and allowing them to move, stretch, and repair. Yet proteins are not only builders of structure, they are also workers of chemistry. Enzymes, a special class of proteins, act as catalysts, speeding up reactions that would otherwise happen too slowly to sustain life. In the body's chemistry, enzymes are everywhere, breaking down carbohydrates into glucose, stitching amino acids together into new proteins, copying DNA, repairing damage, and producing energy. Without enzymes, the processes of life would slow to near stillness, too sluggish to support even the simplest organism. With enzymes, reactions unfold in fractions of seconds, coordinated and precise, maintaining the delicate balance of metabolism. Proteins also serve as messengers. Hormones such as insulin and glucagon are proteins that carry signals about energy, telling cells when to absorb glucose and when to release it. Other protein messengers influence growth, reproduction, and even mood. On the surface of cells, receptors, often themselves proteins, receive these signals, interpreting them and triggering responses inside. In this way, proteins are both the message and the messenger, part of the communication network that keeps every cell in conversation with the whole. The immune system, too, depends on proteins. Antibodies, which defend the body against foreign invaders, are intricately shaped proteins that can recognize and bind to specific pathogens. This recognition allows the body to target bacteria, viruses, or toxins with remarkable precision, neutralizing threats before they can cause harm. Other proteins act as complements, piercing invaders or marking them for destruction. In this way, proteins act as silent guardians, maintaining health and resilience against an ever-changing environment. Nutrition, of course, provides the raw material for all these proteins. The body can manufacture some amino acids on its own, but 9 of them are considered essential, meaning they must come from food. These essential amino acids are found in varying amounts across different sources. Animal products, such as meat, eggs, and dairy, tend to provide all of them in complete form. Plant sources, such as grains, legumes, and nuts, may provide some but not all. Yet when combined thoughtfully, they offer the full range. A bowl of rice paired with beans, for example, creates a balance of amino acids that is complete. In this way, human traditions of food, passed down through generations, often reflect an intuitive understanding of protein balance. The journey of proteins in the body begins with digestion. When food reaches the stomach, strong acids and enzymes break down proteins into smaller fragments. In the small intestine, these fragments are reduced further into individual amino acids, which are absorbed into the bloodstream. From there, the body distributes them to tissues, where they can be reassembled into new proteins according to need. This is a cycle of constant renewal. Proteins from food are dismantled, their amino acids recycled, and new proteins built to serve the ever-changing requirements of life. Muscles repair after exertion, skin heals after injury, enzymes are replaced as they wear out, and antibodies are built anew in response to challenges. At every moment, proteins are being broken down and built again, a rhythm of destruction and creation that underlies growth, repair, and adaptation. Proteins also have a quiet role in providing energy, though the body prefers not to use them this way. If carbohydrates and fats are unavailable, proteins can be broken down, their amino acids converted into glucose or other energy-yielding molecules. Yet this comes at a cost. For every amino acid burned for energy is one less available for building. In times of scarcity, the body will do this, but it is like dismantling part of the house to feed the fire. Thus, proteins are best preserved for their primary roles as builders and workers, while carbohydrates and fats shoulder the task of fuel. Looking more broadly, proteins are essential not only within individual bodies but across ecosystems. In plants, proteins form the enzymes that capture sunlight during photosynthesis, weaving energy into sugars. In animals, proteins drive movement, growth, and defense. In microbes, proteins catalyze the transformations of soil and water that sustain ecosystems. Even the most ancient life forms, the first single-celled organisms, relied on proteins to shape their structures and carry out their chemistry. In this way, proteins connect all living things, forming a continuous thread through the story of life. It is calming to reflect that the word protein itself comes from the Greek proteos, meaning of first importance. And indeed, they are. They are the primary workers, the ones who do the daily labor of keeping life alive. Every thought, every breath, every beat of the heart relies on proteins at work, unseen but essential. They do not rest, yet their activity is so seamless that we can rest, trusting that they continue their endless tasks. As we close this part of our journey, we may imagine proteins as countless invisible artisans, shaping, repairing, signaling, and defending, each one folded precisely into the form required for its work. They are silent, tireless, endlessly versatile, and always present. Without them, there would be no structure, no repair, no adaptation. With them, life endures, renews, and flourishes. They are, in truth, the body's builders and workers, guardians of its continuity. 10. Amino acids, the building blocks of protein. To understand proteins fully, one must step even further down to their most basic components, the amino acids. If proteins are the builders and workers of life, then amino acids are the bricks, the beads, the letters of the alphabet from which all proteins are written. They are small, simple in appearance, yet infinitely versatile. From just 20 standard amino acids, nature has constructed every protein that exists across all forms of life, from the enzymes of bacteria to the structural fibers of whales, from the pigments in flowers to the antibodies that protect humans. Out of this small vocabulary comes the infinite grammar of life. Each amino acid shares the same core structure. At its heart is a carbon atom, attached to 4 different groups: a hydrogen atom, an amino group containing nitrogen, a carboxyl group, and a side chain known as the R group. It is this side chain that gives each amino acid its unique personality. Some side chains are small and unassuming, like those of glycine or alanine. Others are bulky and ring-shaped, like tryptophan or phenylalanine. Some carry a positive or negative charge, such as lysine or glutamic acid, while others are neutral but able to form special bonds, such as cysteine with its sulfur-containing group. In this way, each amino acid brings its own character to the chain, influencing how it will fold, what shape it will take, and what function it will perform. Among these 20 amino acids, 9 are considered essential for humans, meaning that the body cannot produce them and must obtain them from food. These are histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. They arrive to us through meals of grains, legumes, seeds, nuts, dairy, eggs, fish, or meat. The remaining amino acids, while equally important, can be synthesized by the body from other molecules when needed. This distinction does not make them less vital, only that the body has learned ways to craft them from other resources. Still, without regular intake of the essential amino acids, protein synthesis slows, growth falters, and repair is compromised. The beauty of amino acids lies not only in their variety but also in the way they combine, linked together through bonds called peptide bonds. Amino acids form chains, dipeptides, tripeptides, and eventually long polypeptides. As these chains grow, they fold upon themselves, guided by the chemistry of their side chains. Hydrophobic amino acids cluster inward, avoiding water, while hydrophilic ones extend outward. Charged amino acids may attract or repel each other, while special bonds, such as disulfide bridges formed by cysteine, hold sections together. This folding creates a three-dimensional structure. A protein's ability to act as an enzyme, a receptor, a transporter, or a structural support depends entirely on the folding of its amino acid chain. Thus, from the simplicity of 20 building blocks arises the astonishing diversity of proteins. Amino acids themselves also serve roles beyond the making of proteins. Some act as precursors to important molecules. Tryptophan, for example, can be transformed into serotonin, a neurotransmitter that influences mood, and melatonin, which helps regulate sleep. Tyrosine can become dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine, molecules essential for attention, alertness, and response to stress. Histidine can be converted into histamine, a molecule involved in immune responses and the regulation of stomach acid. In this way, amino acids are not only the letters that write proteins, but also the seeds from which other vital compounds grow. The metabolism of amino acids reflects their dual role as both builders and energy sources. Normally, amino acids are conserved for making proteins, but when energy is scarce, the body can strip away their nitrogen groups and use their carbon skeletons as fuel. Some amino acids can be converted into glucose through gluconeogenesis, providing energy to the brain and other tissues during fasting. Others can be converted into ketone bodies, serving as alternative fuel. This flexibility demonstrates how deeply woven amino acids are into the fabric of metabolism, serving as both tools for construction and reserves for survival. In nature, the distribution of amino acids reveals patterns that echo across ecosystems. Plants synthesize all the amino acids they need, drawing upon carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur from the soil and air. Animals, in turn, obtain them by consuming plants or other animals. Microbes, with their immense biochemical creativity, produce unusual amino acids that sometimes find their way into medicines or toxins. In this way, amino acids circulate through the living world, passed from plant to herbivore to carnivore, recycled through soil and water, sustaining the endless cycle of life. For humans, the balance of amino acids in the diet has shaped traditions in agriculture. Cultures that relied on grains as staples often paired them with legumes, instinctively creating combinations that provide complete protein. Rice and beans, maize and squash with beans, wheat with lentils. These pairings ensured that essential amino acids were available, even without access to animal sources. In regions where dairy or fish were abundant, these foods provided complete proteins, supporting growth and vitality. The wisdom of these traditions lies in their subtle recognition of balance, even without formal knowledge of biochemistry. It is also soothing to remember that amino acids, though invisible and silent, are constantly at work within us. Each day, proteins in our cells are broken down into their amino acids, and these amino acids are recycled to build new proteins. It is a cycle of renewal that never ends, a rhythm of deconstruction and creation that sustains life. The amino acids we eat become part of our muscles, our enzymes, our skin, our thoughts. They are woven into our very being, making us both dependent on the world around us and connected to it through the shared chemistry of life. As we let these thoughts settle, it becomes clear that amino acids are more than building blocks. They are the alphabet of biology, the fundamental characters from which the language of life is written. They shape proteins, which in turn shape cells, tissues, and organisms. They give rise to neurotransmitters, hormones, and signals that allow thought, mood, and adaptation. They cycle through food webs and ecosystems, linking all living things through a common chemistry. In their quiet way, they embody both simplicity and infinite complexity, both the foundation and the expression of life. And so, as we close this part of our reflection, we may rest in the gentle awareness that within every cell, at every moment, amino acids are at work, joining, folding, transforming, creating. They are the most modest of molecules, small and unassuming, yet they hold the power to shape everything that lives. They are, in truth, the building blocks of proteins, and through proteins, the builders of life itself. 11. Protein functions in the body. 11. When we step back and look at proteins not only as chains of amino acids but as living, working molecules within the body, we begin to see the immense variety of their functions. They are not confined to one role or one system, but instead extend into every corner of physiology. They are the builders of tissues, the catalysts of chemical reactions, the messengers of communication, the guardians of defense, and the quiet transporters of essential materials. In a sense, proteins are the living machinery of the body working continuously, adapting constantly, and shaping the flow of life in silence. Perhaps the most fundamental role of proteins is structural. Collagen, the most abundant protein in the human body, provides strength and support to connective tissues. It forms the fibers that give skin its elasticity, bones their resilience, and tendons their ability to withstand tension. Without collagen, tissues would be fragile, unable to hold their form. Keratin, another structural protein, builds hair, nails, and the outer layers of skin, creating barriers against the environment. Elastin, as its name suggests, allows tissues to stretch and return to shape, vital in blood vessels and lungs. These structural proteins are like the beams, ropes, and walls of the body's architecture, holding everything in place and ensuring flexibility where needed. Proteins are also enzymes, the catalysts that allow the body's chemistry to unfold. Without them, chemical reactions would proceed at a pace too slow for life. Enzymes take part in digestion, breaking down carbohydrates, fats, and proteins into smaller components that the body can use. They synthesize DNA and RNA, repair damaged molecules, and guide energy production in the mitochondria. Each enzyme is highly specific, shaped to recognize only certain molecules and to carry out only certain reactions. This precision creates order in metabolism, ensuring that the right processes happen at the right time. It is easy to forget that every breath, every heartbeat, every thought depends on enzymes, quietly accelerating the reactions that sustain us. Hormones and messengers are also, in many cases, proteins. Insulin, released by the pancreas, tells cells to absorb glucose after a meal. Glucagon, its counterpart, signals the liver to release glucose when energy is low. Growth hormone stimulates tissues to grow and repair. Many other protein-based messengers direct metabolism, reproduction, and immune responses. These hormones travel through the blood, carrying information from one part of the body to another, ensuring that organs act in harmony rather than isolation. At the receiving end, receptors, often themselves proteins, interpret these signals and trigger changes within cells. This network of proteins speaking to proteins creates a symphony of communication that keeps the body balanced. Another essential role of proteins is defense. The immune system depends on antibodies, which are highly specialized proteins, able to recognize and neutralize foreign invaders. Each antibody is shaped to fit a specific target, binding to viruses, bacteria, or toxins with exquisite precision. Once bound, they signal other parts of the immune system to attack and remove the threat. Complement proteins, another defensive group, puncture invader cells or tag them for destruction. Meanwhile, proteins like interferons alert neighboring cells to danger, preparing them to resist infection. In this way, proteins act as both sentinels and soldiers, protecting the body from harm while maintaining peace within. Transport is another quiet but vital function of proteins. Hemoglobin, found in red blood cells, is perhaps the most famous example. This protein binds oxygen in the lungs and releases it in tissues, carrying the breath of life to every corner of the body. Hemoglobin also helps carry carbon dioxide back to the lungs, maintaining balance. Other proteins carry fats through the bloodstream, escorting them where they are needed. Albumin, abundant in blood plasma, binds and transports hormones, vitamins, and minerals, keeping them available for tissues. Membrane proteins embedded in cells act as gatekeepers, controlling the flow of ions and molecules, allowing nutrients to enter and wastes to leave. These transport proteins are like couriers and doorkeepers, ensuring that movement across the body happens smoothly. Proteins are also regulators of balance within cells. Some act as chaperones, guiding the folding of other proteins and ensuring they take the correct shape. Others monitor conditions and adjust activity, switching metabolic pathways on or off depending on the body's needs. Still others serve as repair systems, recognizing damaged molecules and replacing or recycling them. In this way, proteins not only build and act but also supervise, maintaining harmony even in the face of constant change. Movement, too, depends on proteins. In muscles, actin and myosin slide past one another to create contraction, allowing us to walk, breathe, and move in countless ways. In cells, tiny protein motors carry cargo along microscopic tracks, transporting organelles and molecules to where they are needed. Even the beating of cilia and flagella, structures that allow cells to move or to sweep fluids, is driven by proteins. These movements, from the large scale of limbs to the microscopic scale of cells, remind us that proteins are not only static scaffolds but active engines of motion. On a deeper level, proteins shape our very identity. Glycoproteins, which are proteins with sugar groups attached, form part of the outer surface of cells. They act like markers or signatures, helping cells recognize one another. This is how the immune system distinguishes self from non-self, and how cells organize themselves into tissues. Proteins even influence memory and thought, as neurotransmitter receptors in the brain determine how signals are received and processed. The fact that proteins are involved in everything from muscle contraction to memory formation underscores their extraordinary versatility. Nutrition ties directly into these functions. The amino acids we consume each day are not stored long-term, as carbohydrates and fats are. Instead, they are constantly recycled into the proteins required at the moment into enzymes, antibodies, transporters, or structural fibers. This ongoing turnover means that a steady supply of protein is essential, not for fuel, but for the endless rebuilding that keeps the body alive. Without sufficient intake, the body must sacrifice muscle or other tissues to obtain amino acids, showing just how fundamental they are. It is soothing to reflect that all these functions, so varied, so essential, are carried out without our awareness. Proteins do not wait for us to think of them. They simply work, continuously and tirelessly. They are the quiet laborers who keep the body in motion, in balance, in health. From the moment of birth to the last breath, proteins build, repair, protect, and regulate, never ceasing in their activity. As we close this part, it is calming to imagine proteins as a vast community of workers within us, each with a task, each contributing to the whole. Some are strong beams, holding tissues together. Some are swift messengers, carrying signals across the body. Some are guardians, standing watch against harm. Others are couriers, guiding oxygen or nutrients to their destinations. Together, they form the living infrastructure of life itself, and though they are invisible, their presence is constant, their work unending, ensuring that life continues in silence, in balance, in quiet strength. 12. Protein structure and folding. If proteins are the workers and builders of life, then their ability to perform such a wide variety of tasks rests upon one fundamental principle: their structure. A protein is not just a long chain of amino acids. It is a chain that folds into a precise shape, and in that shape lies its power. Structure determines function. A misfolded protein, even if built from the correct amino acids, may lose its purpose, while a properly folded protein can catalyze reactions, carry oxygen, transmit signals, or hold tissues together with perfect reliability. To explore protein structure and folding is to uncover the hidden artistry of biology, where simple sequences of molecules twist and curl into forms of extraordinary elegance. Scientists often describe protein structure in 4 levels: primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. The primary structure is simply the sequence of amino acids, strung together like beads on a string. This sequence alone carries all the information needed to guide folding. Each amino acid contributes differently. Some prefer water, some avoid it, some carry charges, some form special bonds. This sequence is the blueprint, the starting point of all protein function. The secondary structure arises when sections of the chain fold into regular patterns, stabilized by hydrogen bonds between backbone atoms. 2 common patterns are the alpha helix, a spiral coil, and the beta sheet, a pleated arrangement like folded fabric. These patterns create stability and serve as the scaffolding upon which further folding can build. Secondary structures are not random. They repeat across many proteins, showing the universal patterns that emerge from simple chemical principles. The tertiary structure is the overall 3-dimensional shape of a single protein chain, formed as the secondary structures bend, twist, and interact with one another. Here, the side chains of amino acids play their greatest role. Hydrophobic groups cluster inward, away from water, while hydrophilic and charged groups remain on the surface. Disulfide bridges form between cysteine residues, locking sections together. The final fold is not rigid but dynamic, allowing the protein to flex and adapt as it works. In this shape, the active sites of enzymes appear, the binding pockets of receptors emerge, and the transport channels of membranes are formed. Function begins to manifest from form. Finally, quaternary structure describes how multiple protein chains come together to form a larger complex. Hemoglobin is a classic example. It consists of 4 chains, each able to bind oxygen, working together to carry this vital gas through the bloodstream. Other proteins form dimers, trimers, or vast assemblies, cooperating to perform tasks too complex for a single chain. At this level, proteins are not solitary but communal, combining their shapes and functions into coordinated machines. The process of folding, by which a protein moves from a simple chain to its final shape, is a remarkable event. It happens spontaneously, guided only by the chemical properties of amino acids and the environment around them. Yet it is not always smooth. Proteins often require the assistance of chaperone molecules, themselves proteins, which help guide folding, prevent tangles, and ensure accuracy. These chaperones act like careful guardians, watching over new proteins and correcting mistakes before they cause harm. Without them, misfolded proteins would accumulate, leading to malfunction or disease. Misfolding, when it does occur, reminds us of the delicacy of protein structure. A single misplaced fold can render a protein useless or even harmful. In some cases, misfolded proteins can clump together, forming aggregates that disrupt cells. Diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Huntington's are linked to such protein misfolding, where fragments build up and interfere with brain function. Though these conditions are complex and multifaceted, they underscore how much life depends on the quiet precision of folding. And yet, most of the time, folding is remarkably reliable. In every cell, at every moment, thousands of proteins are being synthesized, folded, and set to work, all with extraordinary accuracy. This is one of the quiet marvels of biology. The ability of molecules, guided only by chemical principles, to assemble themselves into complex machines. Life relies on this self-organization, on the fact that sequences of amino acids reliably fold into functional shapes without need for conscious direction. Nature also demonstrates creativity in protein folding. Some proteins can switch between shapes, adopting one structure under certain conditions and another when the environment changes. This ability allows them to serve as switches or sensors, responding to signals and adapting function accordingly. Other proteins are intrinsically disordered, lacking a fixed shape altogether, yet becoming structured when they bind to a partner. These unusual proteins remind us that folding is not always about reaching one rigid form, but can also be about flexibility, adaptability, and responsiveness. From an evolutionary perspective, protein folding reflects the gradual refinement of life. Over millions of years, sequences of amino acids that folded reliably into useful shapes were preserved, while less effective ones were lost. The result is a vast library of protein structures, each honed for function, each encoded in the DNA of organisms. Some structures, such as the alpha helix and beta sheet, appear across all forms of life, testifying to their fundamental usefulness. Others are unique to specific organisms or tasks, reflecting the diversity of life's solutions. On a human scale, our understanding of protein folding has grown through science, but it is also something we participate in every day without realizing. Each time we eat, the amino acids from our food are used to build new proteins, which fold into their proper shapes, becoming part of muscles, enzymes, or hormones. Each time we heal, folding allows new proteins to form fibers that knit tissue back together. Even as we sleep, folding continues, silently maintaining the structures and functions that keep us alive. It is calming to imagine protein folding as a quiet choreography within us. Chains of amino acids, newly born from ribosomes, begin to twist and curl, guided by the simplest of rules, yet arriving at the most complex of forms. Chaperones watch over them, ensuring order. Shapes emerge, binding pockets form, and functions awaken. From simplicity arises complexity. From sequence arises structure. From structure arises life itself. And so, as we close this part of our reflection, we may rest in the awareness that within every cell, at every moment, countless proteins are folding into their shapes, becoming the workers and guardians we depend upon. It is a process as old as life, as reliable as breath, as quiet as sleep. Protein structure and folding remind us that beneath the surface of our awareness, intricate artistry is always at work, weaving the molecules of life into the forms that sustain us. 13. Enzymes, catalysts of life. Among all the many roles proteins take within the body, there is one that stands apart for its elegance and necessity: the role of enzymes. Enzymes are proteins that act as catalysts, molecules that make chemical reactions possible at the speed required for life. Without enzymes, the chemistry of the body would still unfold, but so slowly that survival would be impossible. Food would not be digested, energy would not be released, DNA would not be copied, and even the simplest processes of thought or movement could not take place. With enzymes, however, these reactions happen swiftly, precisely, and in perfect coordination. To reflect on enzymes is to reflect on the quiet spark of life's chemistry, the hidden force that keeps all processes flowing in balance. Every enzyme is built upon the same principle: Structure determines function. Each one is a protein folded into a unique three-dimensional shape. Within this shape lies a small region known as the active site, a pocket or groove precisely arranged to bind to a particular molecule, called the substrate. When a substrate enters the active site, the enzyme adjusts slightly to embrace it, a phenomenon called induced fit. Bonds are weakened, chemical groups are aligned, and the reaction unfolds not through brute force, but through subtle guidance. Once the reaction is complete, the product is released, and the enzyme is free to act again, ready to catalyze the same reaction thousands, even millions of times. The power of enzymes lies not only in their speed but also in their specificity. Each enzyme is designed for a particular reaction, recognizing only certain substrates. This specificity ensures that the chemistry of the body remains orderly, with each process taking place at the right time and in the right place. One enzyme breaks down starch into simple sugars. Another stitches amino acids together into new proteins. Some copy DNA with extraordinary accuracy, while others repair it when mistakes occur. In this way, enzymes prevent chaos, channeling energy into precise pathways that sustain life. Enzymes are everywhere in physiology. In digestion, they play a central role. Amylase, found in saliva and the pancreas, begins breaking down starch into maltose, even as food is still in the mouth. Proteases such as pepsin in the stomach and trypsin in the small intestine dismantle proteins into amino acids. Lipases break apart fats into glycerol and fatty acids, ready for absorption. Without these enzymes, nutrients would remain locked in food, unavailable to the body. With them, the energy and building blocks of life are released gently, step by step, ready to nourish cells. Energy metabolism, too, depends on enzymes. Within the mitochondria, enzymes guide the breakdown of glucose through glycolysis and the citric acid cycle, releasing high-energy electrons. Other enzymes carry these electrons through the electron transport chain, finally driving the production of ATP, the energy currency of the cell. Each step depends on precise enzymatic activity, without which energy would remain trapped, unusable. Even the act of breathing relies on enzymes, as carbonic anhydrase in red blood cells converts carbon dioxide into bicarbonate for safe transport, then converts it back for release in the lungs. Enzymes also support the replication and repair of genetic material. DNA polymerase copies the genetic code during cell division, ensuring that each new cell receives a complete set of instructions. Other enzymes patrol the DNA, correcting errors and maintaining fidelity. RNA polymerase transcribes DNA into RNA, the first step in protein synthesis. These enzymatic processes allow life not only to sustain itself, but also to reproduce, adapt, and endure. Beyond metabolism and genetics, enzymes act as regulators. Some enzymes activate or deactivate other proteins by adding or removing phosphate groups, creating cascades of signals that control everything from muscle contraction to memory formation. Others produce signaling molecules such as nitric oxide, which relaxes blood vessels and regulates circulation. In this way, enzymes extend their influence beyond chemistry into communication, linking cells and tissues into coordinated systems. Nature provides striking examples of enzymes at work. In plants, enzymes capture sunlight through photosynthesis, turning carbon dioxide and water into sugars, the foundation of nearly all food chains. In microbes, enzymes break down substances that larger organisms cannot, recycling nutrients through ecosystems. In animals, enzymes contribute to venom, clotting, and healing. Across every form of life, enzymes embody adaptability, turning basic chemical principles into the processes that sustain existence. The sensitivity of enzymes also reflects their delicate nature. Temperature, pH, and environmental conditions can alter their shape, disrupting the active site and reducing their function. This is why human enzymes work best near body temperature and within the narrow pH ranges of blood or cells. Even slight deviations can affect their efficiency, reminding us of the fragility of the systems that sustain us. Yet within these limits, enzymes are remarkably reliable, carrying out their work tirelessly, second after second, without pause. In human history, enzymes have long been harnessed, even before their molecular nature was understood. Fermentation, the process by which microbes produce bread, cheese, yogurt, and wine, relies on enzymes breaking down sugars into alcohol, acids, and gases. Enzymes in rennet have been used for centuries to coagulate milk into cheese. Today, enzymes are applied in medicine, from clot-busting drugs to diagnostic tools, and in industry, where they help in detergents, textiles, and biofuels. Their usefulness extends far beyond the body, a reminder that the chemistry of life is also the chemistry of human culture. As we reflect gently, it is soothing to think of enzymes as quiet facilitators, neither consumed nor exhausted, but always present, ensuring that the flow of life continues. They are invisible companions, guiding the countless reactions that occur within us at every moment. Every blink, every breath, every thought depends on enzymes doing their work with precision. They are tireless, endlessly active, and yet silent, asking nothing in return. And so, enzymes stand as one of nature's most elegant creations. They embody efficiency, specificity, and grace, turning the potential of chemistry into the reality of life. They remind us that within the apparent stillness of the body, immense activity is always taking place, invisible yet unceasing. To rest with this awareness is to recognize the quiet strength of life itself, carried forward by enzymes, the catalysts of life, the unseen hands that keep the flame of existence alive. 14. Carbohydrates, sugars, starches, and fibers. When we turn our attention back to carbohydrates, we return to one of the most familiar yet most quietly complex sources of life's energy. Carbohydrates are often spoken of in simple terms: sugars, starches, fibers, but together, they represent a broad family of molecules that provide fuel, structure, and balance to both plants and animals. They are found in fruits and grains, roots and leaves, honey and milk. They appear in the simplest sweetness of a single sugar and in the dense complexity of plant fibers that pass through our digestion largely unchanged. To reflect on carbohydrates is to recognize the gentle versatility of molecules that are at once nourishment and structure, fleeting energy and long-lasting resilience. At their most basic level, carbohydrates are built from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, arranged in simple ratios. The simplest units are monosaccharides, single sugar molecules such as glucose, fructose, and galactose. Glucose, in particular, is central to life. It is the primary fuel for cells, the sugar that circulates in our blood, and the energy source the brain depends upon most. Fructose, found naturally in fruits and honey, provides sweetness and quick energy, while galactose combines with glucose to form lactose, the sugar in milk. These simple sugars are like the single notes of a melody, small yet powerful, able to provide energy almost immediately after absorption. When two monosaccharides join together, they form disaccharides. Sucrose, the familiar table sugar, is made of glucose and fructose. Lactose, found in milk, is made of glucose and galactose. Maltose, which appears during the breakdown of starch, consists of two glucose molecules. These disaccharides, while slightly larger, are still quickly digested into their simpler parts, releasing energy to the body with little delay. They are the middle ground between the sharp sweetness of single sugars and the more sustained energy of starches. Polysaccharides, by contrast, are long chains of sugars linked together. And here carbohydrates begin to show their diversity. Starch, the primary storage carbohydrate in plants, is a polysaccharide made of many glucose molecules linked in chains. When we eat bread, rice, or potatoes, it is starch we are consuming, and as enzymes break it down, glucose is steadily released, providing a more gradual source of energy than simple sugars alone. Glycogen, the animal counterpart to starch, is stored in the liver and muscles. It serves as a reserve, a quick-release energy supply that the body can call upon during activity or fasting. Glycogen's highly branched structure allows it to be mobilized rapidly, ensuring that energy is never far from reach. Another important polysaccharide is cellulose, the structural carbohydrate of plants. Cellulose makes up the cell walls of leaves, stems, and wood, giving plants their firmness and strength. Unlike starch, cellulose cannot be digested by human enzymes, for the bonds that hold its glucose units together are arranged differently. Instead, cellulose passes through the digestive tract largely intact, forming what we call dietary fiber. Though it does not provide energy, fiber plays a crucial role in digestion. It adds bulk to food, helps regulate the passage of material, and supports a healthy balance of gut microbes. In this way, even carbohydrates that do not directly fuel us still contribute quietly to our well-being. Carbohydrates also have roles beyond energy and structure. Certain complex carbohydrates form part of glycoproteins and glycolipids, molecules embedded in cell membranes. These carbohydrates act as markers, helping cells recognize each other, communicate, and organize into tissues. Others serve as storage forms of energy in seeds and roots, waiting to nourish the next generation of plants or the animals that consume them. Still others act as gels or thickeners in plants, holding water and providing resilience against drying. In this sense, carbohydrates are not merely food for animals but also the foundation of plant survival and adaptation. The digestion of carbohydrates begins almost as soon as food enters the mouth. Salivary amylase, an enzyme, starts breaking down starch into smaller chains, even as food is chewed. In the small intestine, pancreatic enzymes continue the process, breaking starch and disaccharides into simple sugars. These sugars are absorbed into the bloodstream, raising blood glucose levels, and insulin then helps cells take in the glucose for energy or storage. The process is swift and efficient, designed to provide immediate fuel for the body's constant needs. When glucose is abundant, some is stored as glycogen, while excess may be converted into fat for longer-term storage. When glucose is scarce, glycogen reserves are called upon, and eventually even fats and proteins may contribute to maintaining blood sugar. Carbohydrates have shaped human history and culture in profound ways. The cultivation of grains, wheat, rice, maize, provided the foundation for civilizations, offering reliable sources of starch and energy. Tubers such as potatoes, yams, and cassava sustained communities across continents. Fruits and honey provided sweetness long before refined sugar existed, while milk offered lactose as nourishment for those with the ability to digest it into adulthood. Over time, the processing of sugarcane and sugar beet introduced sucrose into diets, altering culinary traditions. Yet at their heart, all these sources reflect the same principle: carbohydrates as accessible, versatile, and adaptable fuels. Different carbohydrates affect the body in different ways. Simple sugars, absorbed quickly, can raise blood glucose sharply, providing a burst of energy, but also leading to a quick decline. Starches and fibers release energy more gradually, supporting steadier levels. Fiber, especially soluble fiber found in oats, fruits, and legumes, can slow absorption and support heart health, while insoluble fiber helps maintain digestive rhythm. In this balance, we see that not all carbohydrates are equal, and their effects depend on their structure, their source, and the context of the meal. It is soothing to consider that carbohydrates, in their many forms, connect us not only to immediate energy, but also to the cycles of nature. The glucose we rely upon each day was first formed in the green leaves of plants, shaped from sunlight, water, and air. The starches in grains are the stored energy of seeds, waiting for growth or for harvest. The fibers in fruits and stems are the scaffolding of plants, supporting life before nourishing ours. To eat carbohydrates is, in a quiet way, to partake in the flow of sunlight, transformed into matter, to join the endless cycle of energy moving through the world. As we close this part of our reflection, we may rest in the awareness that sugars, starches, and fibers are not simple or separate, but part of a continuum of nourishment. They are quick sparks, slow embers, and steady frameworks, each playing a role in sustaining life. They provide energy for movement, material for growth, and balance for digestion. They remind us of our connection to plants, to ecosystems, to the turning of seasons. In their gentle variety, carbohydrates embody both immediacy and endurance, sweetness and strength. They are, in essence, the quiet fuels of life. 15. The role of glucose in the body. Among the many forms of carbohydrates, one stands as the central figure in human physiology. This simple sugar, composed of just 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens, is the body's preferred and most immediate source of energy. It is the sugar that circulates in the blood, the one most tightly regulated, and the one upon which the brain, in particular, depends. To reflect on glucose is to reflect on the very flow of life's energy, the quiet river that nourishes every cell and sustains every thought, breath, and heartbeat. When we consume carbohydrates, whether from fruits, grains, roots, or milk, much of the digestion process ultimately yields glucose. Enzymes break down starches into smaller chains, disaccharides into their components, and polysaccharides into simpler units, until finally glucose appears, ready to be absorbed into the bloodstream. Once in circulation, glucose becomes widely available, transported to tissues and taken up by cells as needed. The presence of glucose in the blood is carefully monitored, for too much or too little can disturb balance. This regulation is achieved largely through hormones, especially insulin and glucagon, which act in harmony to maintain stability. Insulin, secreted by the pancreas after meals, signals cells to absorb glucose, lowering blood sugar while providing fuel for activity and storage. In muscle cells, glucose is used to generate ATP, powering contraction and movement. In liver cells, glucose may be stored as glycogen, ready to be released when energy demands rise. In fat cells, glucose can be converted into fatty acids, contributing to longer-term reserves. Glucagon, released when blood sugar falls, has the opposite effect, signaling the liver to release glucose from its glycogen stores or to produce new glucose from other molecules. Together, insulin and glucagon form a gentle rhythm, keeping glucose levels steady through cycles of eating, fasting, and activity. The brain's relationship with glucose is especially profound. Unlike muscles, which can rely on fats for energy in times of need, the brain requires a steady supply of glucose. Neurons consume vast amounts of energy, constantly pumping ions to transmit electrical signals and maintain communication. Even at rest, the brain accounts for a significant portion of the body's glucose use, a quiet reminder of the energy cost of thought and consciousness. When glucose is scarce, the brain can adapt by using ketone bodies produced from fat. But even then, some glucose remains essential, a thread of dependence that never disappears. Glucose is also vital in red blood cells, which lack mitochondria and therefore cannot use fats or proteins for energy. They rely solely on glucose, breaking it down through glycolysis to generate ATP. This ATP powers the transport of oxygen, ensuring that tissues receive the fuel they need. In this way, glucose supports not only its own metabolism, but also the delivery of oxygen, the other half of life's essential exchange. Within cells, glucose enters metabolic pathways that release energy step by step. Glycolysis, the first stage, splits glucose into two smaller molecules, producing a small yield of ATP. These molecules then enter the citric acid cycle, where more electrons are harvested, and finally, through the electron transport chain, a large amount of ATP is produced. The entire process is efficient, extracting energy from glucose in a controlled way that powers the body without waste. At the same time, intermediates from these pathways serve as building blocks for other molecules, nucleotides, amino acids, and lipids, demonstrating that glucose is not only fuel but also raw material. Excess glucose, when present beyond immediate needs, is stored as glycogen, especially in the liver and muscles. Glycogen is like a readily accessible savings account, a reserve that can be tapped quickly when fasting, exercising, or experiencing sudden energy demands. Unlike fat stores, which provide long-term energy, glycogen is designed for short-term fluctuations, smoothing the ebb and flow of energy needs. When glycogen is depleted, the body turns more to fats, but glucose always remains central in metabolism. Beyond its metabolic roles, glucose has quiet structural functions as well. It is part of glycoproteins and glycolipids on cell surfaces, molecules that help cells recognize each other, communicate, and organize into tissues. Glucose molecules can form polysaccharides like hyaluronic acid, which provides cushioning and hydration in connective tissues. In plants, glucose chains form cellulose and starch, showing once again its dual role as both energy and structure. In every corner of biology, glucose appears not only as fuel, but as a versatile building block. Cultural and historical connections to glucose are deep as well. Honey, one of the earliest sweeteners known to humans, contains both glucose and fructose, treasured for its energy and preservation qualities. Fruits, naturally rich in glucose, have been gathered and cultivated for millennia, their sweetness celebrated as both nourishment and delight. The processing of sugarcane and beets into sucrose, which breaks down into glucose and fructose, shaped economies and diets across centuries. Yet beneath all traditions lies the same truth. Glucose, whether tasted in fruit or hidden in starch, is the universal fuel of life. It is calming to recognize how tightly the body guards its supply of glucose. Mechanisms exist not only to absorb and store it, but also to produce it when needed. Gluconeogenesis, the process of making new glucose from amino acids or glycerol, ensures that blood sugar never falls too low, even in fasting. This redundancy, this careful regulation, reflects how vital glucose is. The body spares no effort to keep it available, for without it, neurons would falter, muscles would weaken, and life itself would dim. As we let these thoughts settle, it becomes clear that glucose is more than just a nutrient. It is the quiet current of energy, the stream that nourishes every cell and supports every action. It flows in the blood, rises and falls with meals, responds to the body's needs with precision, and sustains the most delicate processes of thought and memory. To rest with the awareness of glucose is to recognize the elegance of life's design, where one simple molecule plays so many roles. And so, glucose stands as a reminder of life's reliance on balance and simplicity, a small, unassuming sugar, yet essential to the vast complexity of the human body. It is the flame that keeps us warm, the spark that keeps us moving, the fuel that keeps us alive. Quiet, constant, and always present, glucose is the lifeblood of energy, the gentle rhythm at the center of being. 16. Glycogen, the body's energy reserve. If glucose is the body's immediate spark of energy, then glycogen is the glowing ember held in reserve, ready to be called upon when the flames begin to fade. Glycogen is the body's way of storing glucose, a form of energy savings that provides stability in times of need. Unlike fat, which is designed for long-term storage, glycogen is a short-term, rapidly accessible reserve. It is a safeguard against hunger, a source of fuel for muscles in motion, and a steady hand that keeps blood sugar from falling too low. To reflect on glycogen is to reflect on balance and preparedness, the body's quiet ability to keep energy flowing smoothly, even as circumstances shift. Chemically, glycogen is a polysaccharide, a large molecule made of thousands of glucose units linked together in branching chains. The branches are frequent and numerous, creating a structure that is dense yet accessible. This branching is what makes glycogen so useful. Enzymes can quickly break down glucose units from many ends at once, releasing sugar into the bloodstream or into active cells at remarkable speed. Glycogen is not meant to last long. Rather, it is meant to be mobilized quickly, serving as a bridge between immediate energy from food and longer-term energy from fat. In the human body, glycogen is stored primarily in two places: the liver, and the muscles. Each site serves a distinct purpose. The liver acts as a central regulator of blood glucose. After a meal, when glucose levels rise, insulin stimulates the liver to absorb glucose and store it as glycogen. Later, when hours have passed and blood glucose begins to fall, the liver breaks down its glycogen reserves, releasing glucose back into the bloodstream. In this way, liver glycogen ensures that the brain and other vital organs continue to receive a steady supply of fuel, even between meals or during sleep. It is a quiet guardian, keeping blood sugar balanced through cycles of feeding and fasting. Muscle glycogen, by contrast, is reserved for the muscles themselves. It cannot be released back into the bloodstream in the same way as liver glycogen, because muscle cells lack the enzyme required to share their stored glucose with the rest of the body. Instead, muscle glycogen serves as an on-site supply of energy, fueling contraction during movement. When exercise begins, glycogen is quickly broken down to meet the high demand for ATP. This local reserve allows muscles to respond immediately, whether for a sudden sprint, a steady climb, or the endurance of a long walk. Glycogen in muscles is the stored potential of movement, always ready to be converted into action. The regulation of glycogen is a delicate balance, managed by hormones and enzymes that respond to the body's needs. Insulin promotes the storage of glycogen after eating, encouraging cells to build reserves. Glucagon, released when blood sugar is low, signals the liver to break down glycogen and release glucose. Epinephrine, the hormone of urgency, triggers glycogen breakdown during stress or intense activity, preparing the body for rapid response. These signals ensure that glycogen is never idle but always responsive, adjusting quietly to the ebb and flow of energy demand. The cycle of glycogen storage and release demonstrates the body's deep commitment to balance. After a meal rich in carbohydrates, glycogen stores are replenished, ensuring that reserves are ready. During fasting, sleep, or exercise, glycogen is consumed, smoothing fluctuations and preventing extremes. This constant rhythm storage and release, replenishment and use keeps the body in harmony, allowing energy to flow steadily, even as the outside world changes. In everyday life, glycogen plays a role that often goes unnoticed. The reason we can fast overnight and wake with energy is because liver glycogen has quietly maintained blood sugar during sleep. The reason we can climb a staircase or lift a weight without pause is because muscle glycogen has provided immediate fuel. Even in calm activities such as walking or thinking, glycogen ensures that glucose is always available, ready to support both movement and thought. Without it, energy would fluctuate wildly, and balance would be lost. From a historical and evolutionary perspective, glycogen reflects adaptation to uncertainty. For early humans and animals alike, food was not always constant. Periods of abundance were followed by scarcity. Glycogen allowed the body to store some of the energy from a meal and to release it later, providing stability in an unpredictable environment. Though modern life often offers more regular access to food, the body's reliance on glycogen remains unchanged. It is a system that has endured for millions of years, a simple yet effective way to guard against the unknown. It is also interesting to note that glycogen, while essential, is limited. The body can only store a few hundred grams of glycogen in total, enough for a day or less of energy. Once these stores are depleted, the body must rely more heavily on fat and, in scarcity, on protein. This limitation reflects glycogen's role, not as a long-term reserve, but as a short-term regulator. It is like carrying a small, accessible bag of provisions, while the deeper stores of fat represent the long-term supplies. Together, these systems create resilience, ensuring that energy is available in both the short and long term. The imagery of glycogen as an energy reserve can be soothing to contemplate. It is as though the body keeps a quiet lantern lit, fueled by glucose stored in branching chains, ready to shine when darkness falls. It is a lantern that burns steadily through the night, ensuring that the brain can dream and the heart can beat without pause. It is a lantern that flares brightly when muscles demand sudden strength, guiding every stride, lift, and leap. Always present, always ready. Glycogen is the silent storekeeper of energy, balancing abundance and need with quiet precision. And so, glycogen embodies both preparedness and generosity. It gathers the gifts of a meal, storing them gently, and later releases them without hesitation, keeping life in rhythm. It bridges the gap between feeding and fasting, between stillness and motion, between rest and effort. To rest with this awareness is to recognize the quiet intelligence of the body, the way it holds energy not too tightly, not too loosely, but just enough, always ready to serve. 17. Fats, energy, warmth, and protection. When we turn our focus to fats, we encounter a group of molecules that carry a unique duality. They are at once the body's richest source of stored energy and also essential components of structure and protection. Unlike glucose and glycogen, which are designed for immediate or short-term energy, fats are the long-term reserves, storing energy densely and quietly, waiting to be used when other sources are not enough. They are also the cushions that protect our organs, the insulation that keeps us warm, and the flexible building blocks of every cell membrane. To reflect on fats is to reflect on resilience, endurance, and the silent ways the body prepares for both activity and rest. Fats, or lipids, are chemically distinct from carbohydrates and proteins. While carbohydrates dissolve readily in water, fats are hydrophobic, meaning they do not mix easily with water. This property shapes their roles in the body, making them excellent for long-term storage, as they can be packed densely without attracting water. The main storage form of fat is triglyceride, a molecule composed of 3 fatty acids attached to a glycerol backbone. Fatty acids themselves vary in length and in their saturation, characteristics that influence their behavior and their role in nutrition. One of the defining features of fats is their energy density. A gram of fat provides about 9 calories of energy, more than twice that of carbohydrates or proteins. This density makes fats an ideal storage form, allowing the body to carry large reserves of energy without great bulk. For early humans, this meant survival through times of scarcity, when food was not always available. For animals in nature, fat reserves allow hibernation, migration, or endurance during seasons of scarcity. Even today, in the steady rhythms of daily life, fat serves as the quiet background energy, available whenever glycogen runs low, or when the body requires prolonged fuel. But fats are more than fuel. They are integral to structure. Every cell in the body is surrounded by a membrane composed largely of phospholipids, molecules that contain both hydrophobic tails and hydrophilic heads. These unique structures form bilayers that create barriers, while still allowing flexibility. Within these membranes, fats provide fluidity and stability, ensuring that cells can maintain their shape while also interacting with their environment. Cholesterol, another lipid, inserts itself into membranes, adjusting their stiffness and permeability. Without fats, cells could not hold together, and tissues could not function. Fats also provide warmth and protection. Beneath the skin, layers of adipose tissue act as insulation, conserving body heat and shielding against the cold. Around vital organs, fat forms cushions that absorb shock, protecting delicate structures from injury. This quiet protection is always present, unnoticed, yet essential. A reminder that fat is not merely energy, but also armor. In animals that live in cold environments, such as seals, whales, and polar bears, thick layers of fat, or blubber, provide both insulation and energy reserves, showing the remarkable adaptability of lipids across species. Different types of fats bring different qualities. Saturated fats, with no double bonds in their fatty acid chains, tend to be solid at room temperature, found in butter, cheese, and meat. Unsaturated fats, which contain one or more double bonds, are often liquid, found in oils, nuts, seeds, and fish. Monounsaturated fats, like those in olive oil, and polyunsaturated fats, like those in flax seeds or salmon, have unique effects on health and function. Trans fats, artificially altered to be more stable, have been used in processed foods but are less compatible with natural metabolism. Each type of fat reflects different structures, different behaviors, and different effects, yet all share the central role of supporting life. Essential fatty acids, such as omega-3 and omega-6, cannot be synthesized by the human body and must be obtained from food. These fats are vital for building cell membranes, producing signaling molecules, and supporting brain and heart health. They remind us that fat is not optional but required, woven deeply into the very processes of growth, repair, and communication. From the first moments of life, fats play a role, as the developing brain depends heavily on fatty acids for structure and function. In metabolism, fats serve as the body's long-term endurance fuel. When glycogen reserves are depleted, the body turns increasingly to fat, breaking triglycerides into glycerol and fatty acids. These fatty acids enter pathways of oxidation, generating large amounts of ATP. In times of fasting, extended exercise, or scarcity, fats sustain life with a quiet steadiness. In the liver, fatty acids can also be converted into ketone bodies, alternative fuels that support the brain and muscles when glucose is limited. This flexibility ensures that energy is always available, no matter the circumstances. The cultural and historical significance of fats is also profound. Olive oil, central to Mediterranean traditions, has long been valued not only as food, but as medicine and symbol. Butter, ghee, and lard have shaped cuisines across continents, offering richness and sustenance. Nuts and seeds, rich in oils, have been staples in many regions, compact stores of energy and nutrients. In colder climates, fatty fish and animal fats provided essential calories for survival. Each culture has found its own balance of fats, shaped by environment, availability, and tradition, reflecting the universal role of lipids in nourishment. To contemplate fats is to recognize their quiet generosity. They provide more than we often realize: energy for endurance, warmth in the cold, cushioning for protection, and structure for every cell. They store abundance for times of scarcity and release it when needed, sustaining life through cycles of plenty and want. They are the body's way of holding energy gently, compactly, and reliably, never wasteful, always ready. As we let these thoughts settle, it is soothing to imagine fat not as something to fear, but as a quiet ally. It lies beneath the skin, within cells, and around organs, supporting us without our awareness. It waits patiently in reserves, not demanding attention, yet always prepared to provide. It softens the edges of the body, cushions the delicate, and fuels the strong. It is, in truth, one of life's quiet treasures, sustaining, protecting, and warming us through every stage of existence. 18. Types of fats and their roles in the body. When we speak of fats, we often use the word as though it describes a single substance, one uniform material stored within the body or found in food. In truth, fats are a diverse family of molecules, each type shaped slightly differently, each with unique properties and functions. Some provide stability, others flexibility. Some are solid at room temperature, others remain liquid. Some are essential for life, and others, when present in excess or in unnatural forms, can disturb the body's quiet balance. To reflect on the types of fats is to see not a single substance but a spectrum of molecules, each contributing in its own way to energy, structure, and health. The simplest division is between saturated and unsaturated fats, terms that describe the bonds within the fatty acid chains. Saturated fats have no double bonds. Every carbon atom is fully saturated with hydrogen. This straight, even structure allows the molecules to pack closely together, making them solid at room temperature. Butter, cheese, meat, fat, and coconut oil are examples of foods rich in saturated fats. Within the body, saturated fats provide energy and form part of cell membranes, giving them firmness and stability. In moderation, they support health, but when consumed in excess, they can contribute to imbalances in cholesterol levels, gently reminding us that equilibrium is always important. Unsaturated fats, by contrast, contain one or more double bonds, creating bends or kinks in the fatty acid chains. These kinks prevent the molecules from packing tightly, so unsaturated fats tend to be liquid at room temperature. They are commonly found in plant oils, nuts, seeds, and fish. Monounsaturated fats, with a single double bond, are found abundantly in olive oil, avocados, and almonds. These fats are known to support cardiovascular health, helping maintain healthy cholesterol levels. Polyunsaturated fats, with multiple double bonds, include the essential fatty acids, omega-3 and omega-6. These cannot be synthesized by the body and must be obtained from food. They are critical for building cell membranes, supporting brain function, and producing signaling molecules that regulate inflammation and blood flow. Among polyunsaturated fats, omega-3 fatty acids hold a special place. Found in fatty fish such as salmon and mackerel, as well as in flax seeds, walnuts, and chia seeds. Omega-3s support the heart, the brain, and the eyes. They contribute to the flexibility of cell membranes, allowing communication between neurons and supporting vision. They also produce signaling molecules that calm excessive inflammation, maintaining balance within the immune system. In a quiet way, omega-3s remind us of harmony, ensuring that the body's responses remain measured and protective rather than destructive. Omega-6 fatty acids, found in vegetable oils, nuts, and seeds, are also essential. They play a role in growth, repair, and the immune response. They produce signaling molecules that promote inflammation when needed, such as during injury or infection. While essential, omega-6s must remain in balance with omega-3s, for together they form a system of opposites, one promoting response, the other calming it. In traditional diets, this balance was often maintained naturally, but in modern times, the intake of omega-6s has often grown higher, tipping the scale. Still, both are vital, showing once again that health lies not in exclusion, but in proportion. Another important lipid is cholesterol, often spoken of with concern but in truth indispensable. Cholesterol is not an energy store like triglycerides, but rather a structural and functional molecule. It inserts into cell membranes, modulating their fluidity and strength. It is the precursor for steroid hormones such as cortisol, estrogen, and testosterone, which guide stress responses, reproduction, and development. It is also used to synthesize vitamin D and bile acids, which aid in digestion. The body produces much of its cholesterol in the liver, but it is also obtained from food. Within the blood, cholesterol travels in lipoproteins, low-density lipoproteins, LDL, and high-density lipoproteins, HDL, each serving different transport roles. In this transport system, balance once again matters, for excess LDL can deposit in arteries, while HDL helps clear cholesterol away, maintaining circulation. Phospholipids form yet another vital class. These molecules, with their hydrophilic heads and hydrophobic tails, are the building blocks of all cell membranes. They create the bilayers that define the boundaries of cells and organelles, allowing compartmentalization and protection. Without phospholipids, cells could not exist, for their integrity depends on these molecules forming flexible, self-sealing barriers. Within these membranes, proteins embed themselves, channels open, and signals pass, all supported by the quiet framework of phospholipids. There are also fats that are less natural, formed not by biology but by industrial processes. Trans fats, created when oils are hydrogenated to make them more solid, have been used in processed foods for stability and shelf life. Unlike natural cis-unsaturated fats, their altered structure changes how they behave in the body. Studies have shown that trans fats can disrupt cholesterol balance and increase the risk of heart disease. For this reason, they are now being phased out in many places. Their story serves as a reminder that not all fats are created equal, and that the body responds best to the forms shaped by nature. Fats also exist in specialized forms with unique roles. Brown fat, found in small amounts in the human body, especially in infants, is rich in mitochondria and burns energy to produce heat, helping maintain body temperature. White fat, by contrast, stores energy in large droplets and makes up most of the body's adipose tissue. Both types serve their purposes, one for warmth and immediate activity, the other for long-term reserve. The coexistence of these forms shows once again how lipids adapt to meet diverse needs. From a cultural perspective, different fats have been valued in different ways. Olive oil in the Mediterranean, ghee in South Asia, fish oils in coastal communities, and nut and seed oils in many traditional diets all reflect local resources and adaptations. Each type of fat, drawn from the land or sea, became part of nourishment, culture, and tradition. Together, they remind us that fats are not abstract molecules but companions in human history, shaping diets, rituals, and survival. To contemplate the types of fats is to see diversity woven into a single category of molecules. Each type has a role, whether storing energy, building membranes, signaling processes, or insulating the body. Some are essential, others optional, some abundant, and some rare. Together they form a spectrum that reflects life's complexity, offering energy, protection, and adaptability. As we close this part, it is calming to think of fats not as singular or simplistic, but as a family of molecules, each with a place. They are the solid stability of saturated fats, the graceful flexibility of unsaturated fats, the balance of omega-3 and omega-6, the quiet support of phospholipids, and the structural strength of cholesterol. They are, in essence, the varied threads of life's fabric, woven into every cell, every tissue, and every moment of endurance. 19. Cholesterol and its quiet importance. Among the many lipids that shape the human body, cholesterol occupies a unique and sometimes misunderstood place. Often spoken of with caution, cholesterol is frequently associated with concerns about heart health and circulation. Yet beneath these worries lies a deeper truth. Cholesterol is not only natural but essential. It is a structural component of every cell, a precursor for vital hormones, and a quiet regulator of membrane function. To reflect gently on cholesterol is to look beyond its reputation and to see the subtle, indispensable roles it plays in sustaining life. Chemically, cholesterol is a sterol, a molecule with a rigid ring structure that distinguishes it from the long chains of fatty acids found in triglycerides and phospholipids. Its design allows it to interact closely with the lipid bilayers of cell membranes. By inserting itself among the fatty acid chains, cholesterol helps regulate the fluidity of membranes, keeping them neither too rigid nor too fluid. This balancing act ensures that membranes remain stable while still allowing the movement of proteins, channels, and signals. Without cholesterol, membranes would lose their fine-tuned flexibility, and cells would struggle to maintain order in their boundaries. Cholesterol is also a precursor for some of the body's most important molecules. From cholesterol, the body synthesizes steroid hormones, a family that includes cortisol, aldosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. These hormones guide essential processes: stress response, salt and water balance, reproduction, growth, and development. Each one carries profound influence, yet each traces its origin to cholesterol, quietly transformed by enzymes into signals of life's continuity. Vitamin D, too, arises from cholesterol. When the skin is exposed to sunlight, cholesterol derivatives are converted into the initial forms of this vitamin, which is then processed by the liver and kidneys into its active state. Vitamin D supports bone health, immune function, and overall balance, linking the quiet presence of cholesterol with the nurturing warmth of sunlight. In the liver, cholesterol is also used to produce bile acids, molecules that aid digestion by emulsifying fats, allowing them to be broken down and absorbed. In this way, cholesterol not only forms cells and hormones, but also helps the body use other lipids effectively. Though the body obtains cholesterol from food, much of it is synthesized internally. primarily in the liver. This self-sufficiency reflects cholesterol's importance. Life cannot depend entirely on outside sources for such a vital molecule. Still, dietary intake influences levels, adding to the body's own production. To transport cholesterol through the watery environment of blood, the body packages it into lipoproteins, combinations of lipids and proteins that carry fats to and from tissues. Two types of lipoproteins are especially well known: low-density lipoproteins, LDL, and high-density lipoproteins, HDL. LDL carries cholesterol from the liver to tissues, where it can be used in membranes, hormones, and other functions. When LDL levels rise too high, however, cholesterol may deposit in the walls of arteries, leading to narrowing and stiffness. HDL, by contrast, collects excess cholesterol from tissues and returns it to the liver for processing and removal. In this way, HDL helps maintain balance, preventing accumulation. It is not that cholesterol itself is harmful, but that its transport and distribution must be kept in harmony. The dual nature of cholesterol, essential and yet potentially problematic, reminds us once again of the theme of balance. Too little cholesterol, and cells would falter, hormones would decline, and digestion would weaken. Too much, and circulation may be impaired. Health lies between extremes, with the body's regulation ensuring that cholesterol is present in the right amounts, in the right places, at the right times. Cultural history also reflects cholesterol's importance, though often indirectly. Foods rich in cholesterol, such as eggs, meats, and dairy, have nourished humans for centuries, providing not only energy, but also the raw materials for cell membranes and hormones. Only in recent times has cholesterol been studied in detail, leading to a more nuanced understanding of its roles. Where once it was viewed primarily as a risk, it is now recognized as a molecule of quiet importance, necessary for life, and requiring only moderation and balance. On a deeper level, cholesterol can be seen as a mediator between rigidity and fluidity. In membranes, it balances structure with flexibility. In hormones, it translates structure into communication. In bile acids, it bridges fat and water, allowing digestion to unfold. In each role, cholesterol is less about dominance and more about balance, shaping life not through abundance, but through careful positioning. It is soothing to imagine cholesterol as a quiet architect within every cell. It does not call attention to itself, yet it stabilizes the walls, strengthens the framework, and prepares the signals that guide growth and repair. It is present in every tissue, silent but indispensable, flowing through the blood in small packages, traveling to where it is needed. Without it, life would not hold together. And yet with it, life continues seamlessly, day after day. And so, cholesterol stands not as a villain but as a partner, one whose role is easily overlooked but deeply necessary. To reflect on cholesterol is to see how life relies on subtle balance, how even a single molecule can be both friend and challenge, depending on its place and proportion. As with so much in biology, harmony is the key, and cholesterol reminds us gently that structure, function, and balance are always intertwined. 20. Gentle closing reflections on proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. As we come to the end of this long, quiet exploration of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, it is soothing to pause and let the threads of knowledge weave themselves into a gentle tapestry. These three great categories of nutrients, so familiar in daily life, are more than just words on labels or elements of meals. They are the very foundations of biology, the molecules that shape structure, provide energy, and guide the countless processes of life. In their presence, we see not only nourishment, but also balance, resilience, and the quiet intelligence of nature. Proteins, the builders and workers of the body, remind us of precision and diversity. From their chains of amino acids arise enzymes that catalyze reactions, fibers that strengthen tissues, and antibodies that protect us. Each protein folds into its own shape, carrying within it the memory of its sequence and the promise of its function. They are the silent craftsmen of life, constructing, repairing, and defending with tireless devotion. To reflect on proteins is to recognize the artistry of form and function, the way shape creates purpose. Carbohydrates, the quick sparks and steady embers of energy, show us the rhythms of fuel and flow. In simple sugars, they offer immediate vitality. In starches, they provide endurance. And in fibers, they bring balance and support. Glucose, the central sugar, flows through the blood like a gentle river, feeding every cell and sustaining every thought. Glycogen, stored away in liver and muscle, acts as a reserve, bridging the gaps between meals and effort. Carbohydrates remind us of cycles, of abundance and need, of energy flowing steadily from sunlight through plants into the lives of animals and people. Fats, the quiet reserves and the cushions of protection, embody endurance and resilience. In triglycerides, they store energy densely, waiting to be called upon in times of need. In membranes, they provide structure and flexibility, shaping the very walls of life's cells. In warmth and insulation, they shield and protect, ensuring survival in both cold and scarcity. Cholesterol and essential fatty acids remind us of subtlety molecules that are small yet vital, providing hormones, signals, and balance. Fats are both fuel and framework, comfort and strength, patience and readiness. Together, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates create harmony. None is complete alone, and each depends on the others. Proteins cannot form without the energy supplied by carbohydrates and fats. Carbohydrates cannot be stored or mobilized without enzymes and proteins. Fats cannot form membranes or produce hormones without the help of proteins and carbohydrates. It is in their interplay that life finds continuity, balance, and strength. The body, in its quiet intelligence, does not elevate one above the others, but weaves them into a seamless whole, adjusting gently to need, supply, and circumstance. These molecules also connect us to the broader cycles of the natural world. The glucose we consume was once formed in green leaves, where plants captured sunlight and turned it into matter. The proteins we eat, whether from plants or animals, trace their origins to the same amino acids, cycling endlessly through life. The fats that warm us and fuel us are the long-held reserves of seeds, animals, and oceans. To eat, to digest, and to live is to join these cycles, to participate in the great flow of matter and energy that connects all life. It is comforting to consider how these molecules act without our awareness, sustaining us through every moment. Proteins fold and act. Enzymes catalyze reactions. Glucose flows. Glycogen releases. Fats store and protect, all without our conscious thought. While we sleep, these processes continue, maintaining the heartbeat, breathing, healing, and thought. Life is carried forward quietly, molecule by molecule, in an endless choreography that has been unfolding for billions of years. Throughout human history, these nutrients have also shaped culture and survival. Grains, fruits, and roots supplied carbohydrates that supported civilizations. Oils, seeds, and animal fats provided energy and warmth in diverse lands. Meat, legumes, and dairy offered protein for growth and strength. Each culture found its own balance, shaped by landscape, climate, and tradition. Yet all drew upon the same universal molecules. This unity in diversity reflects the shared foundations of life, reminding us that beneath differences lies the same chemistry. As this reflection draws to a close, it is soothing to rest in the awareness that proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are not merely substances we consume, but companions in life. They are within us and around us, part of the food we eat, the tissues we build, and the energy we use. They are the bridges between the microscopic and the visible, between the chemical and the living, between the quiet molecules and the vibrant experience of being alive. And so, in closing, we may picture the body as a gentle orchestra, each section playing its part in harmony, proteins as the intricate strings, weaving complexity and detail, carbohydrates as the rhythmic percussion, steady and reliable, providing the beat of energy, fats as the deep, resonant tones, providing endurance, warmth, and foundation. Together they create the music of life, a melody that flows quietly, endlessly, sustaining every breath, every thought, every dream. With this thought, we can rest, knowing that even as we sleep, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates continue their work, silent and tireless, keeping life in balance. They are the quiet caretakers of existence, the unseen companions of every moment, carrying us gently through the rhythms of day and night, waking and resting, eating and dreaming.